Stillman and Company is delivered by TriStar Moving. ESPN 102.5 The Game. Caroline Fenton and Ian are here. Titans are practicing as we speak. Who's coaching the Titans right now?
Mike Vrabel via Zoom.
I don't think you're allowed to do that.
But why not?
I don't know.
That's a stupid rule if so.
I was watching Outkick 360 and they were discussing that, and they have no idea. If he's watching in live time and has a Bluetooth piece into one of the coaches.
Right.
And it's yeah, hey coach, will you go over there and will you tell them that XYZ? They have no idea about that.
I just picture that Hugh Freeze picture when he's in the hospital and he's he's in a hospital bed overlooking the Liberty game and he's just giving them a thumbs up. That's how I picture it. Vrabel off in the distance somewhere in his COVID bubble.
So that sounds like a lot more fun than I envision a Bobby Petrino who got in a motorcycle accident having to coach from the press box at spring practice and then having that press conference with the neck brace and the cut up face.
That is really sad.
And telling the media, well, I have to watch practice from upstairs and I've got a walkie-talkie. And he had this guy that was kind of his consigliere. His name was Andy Wagner. We called him Fat Andy.
Was he fat? I'll let everyone else interpret that for themselves.
He was rather large, and he was Bobby's, knows where the bodies are buried kind of guy, and he was and I have a walkie-talkie, communicate with Andy Wagner, so if there's anything I need to say, I can say it down there, and I was thinking about that. And just the visual of Bobby Petrino with a straight face telling us that he got in a motorcycle accident with nobody else on the motorcycle and all that. So, anywho, there's a lot of things that are surrounding the end of training camp, right? So this is the last week I think the media can watch practice. Then they have a week of practice, nothing. Then they have a week of practice, Arizona Cardinals. It's pretty simple there. Chicago Bears in this week, there's all this talk. And I watched ESPN this morning, and I've listened to all the shows, and I've seen everything on Twitter, and I've looked at, and the things that people are talking about right now, as far as the NFL is concerned, I have zero interest in. We talked about whether or not we cared if it was a big deal that Vrabel had COVID, and we both said no, it's not a big deal that Vrabel has COVID. Right now, the topics at Titans camp, all I want to know is, are the starting players going to be back for the Arizona game? That's all I care about. Everything else, to me, is all just fodder. It's all just, you got 4 hours to fill in a talk show, so let's talk about whether or not Dez Fitzpatrick is going to make the roster. Now, maybe this is because my level of caring on a lot of things has probably decreased significantly over the last 5 days. Maybe it's not. I don't know. But I'm listening to, I got in the car last night. I went to my parents' house. I watched the Braves game, and I get in the car after the game, and they're talking on the radio, it was national radio, about Justin Fields and how Andy Dalton is the starting quarterback and Justin Fields is going to start here on Saturday night. And it was the host was just offended that Justin Fields is not the starter in Chicago. And Dan Orlovsky, and I can't stand that guy, he sent out a tweet the other day, and he was talking about how these teams don't get it anymore and that young guys don't need to sit. And I'm thinking, who's the best quarterback in the NFL in your opinion right now? You had to take one quarterback today.
Patrick Mahomes.
Sat for a year. Who's the second best quarterback in the NFL?
Aaron Rodgers.
Sat for 3 years. Who's the greatest quarterback of all time?
Tom Brady.
Sat for a year. Okay, so I hear all these people that sit there and say, the game has changed and they need to play Justin Fields and they need to. You know who started as a rookie? Jameis Winston. Marcus Mariota, those, and I'm not saying that Jameis is, the point I'm making is I hear all the talk, both on the Titans side and on this side, and I'm really starting to think to myself, are we at a stage where training camp has now become minutia, and even for the players, I got to believe they're probably kind of bored. And we're just kind of barreling towards the finish line when the Arizona Cardinals come up. Because, again, it's 2 more practices, Chicago, and I doubt Vrabel, they had the kickoff lunch in today, and Vrabel talked to the season ticket holders via Zoom. Poor guy. Vrabel talked to the season ticket holders via Zoom and told him he didn't know who was going to start or if the starters were going to play or whatever. And, I mean, I don't even know if the starting coach is going to coach. So whether or not the players are going to play, I mean,
he's first in the depth chart.
He is the first-string head coach. But I'm saying, I'm like, if Vrabel is telling the season ticket holders he doesn't know if the starters are going to start, then the answer is the starters are not going to start.
Yeah.
And I also would like to guess that if the starters aren't going to start, the starters aren't going to play, because I highly doubt the starters are going to back up. So, like, the Sam Ficken thing, I think that's, like, worth talking about. That's a big deal right now in camp. But I feel like everything else is just talk. And it's, like, just there to get us from now until the first game, and it's like everybody's just playing this giant game of charades about what is important or what isn't important. I mean, do we really care? We talked about this yesterday. Do we really care if Mekhi Sargent is the third or fourth running back or Jeremy McNichols is the third or fourth running back? Like, does that matter?
Right now, it's all we got. So if we want to talk about Mekhi Sargent for 4 hours, sure. But on September 12th, then no. I'm not going to care about Mekhi Sargent and Jeremy McNichols.
I keep going
All
back.
respect to Mekhi Sargent and Jeremy McNichols.
I keep going back to me sitting in the car last night and hearing this host, I am not kidding, sounded like Matt Nagy was ruining his life by starting Andy Dalton. Like, how dare they start Andy Dalton over Justin Fields? Well, who cares what you think? What do you know that Matt, I don't, and look, I know sports talk radio, the backbone of it is second guessing coaches and general managers.
Right.
But I don't know why everybody's offended by this. Am I supposed to be offended by this? To me, that's all talk.
Also, it's important to note, there are a few Bears starting offensive linemen that are hurt that'll be out week 1. So are you going to put your first-round draft pick in there behind a bunch of backup offensive linemen?
I mean, if he's your starting quarterback, then he's got to play. Like, if he's your starting quarterback, like if the Jacksonville Jaguars have 3 offensive linemen get hurt, they're not putting Gardner Minshew in there. Like, Trevor Lawrence is the quarterback. Right. So if you decide that Justin Fields is the starting quarterback, then it doesn't matter how many linemen get hurt. You have to play the guy behind those backup linemen, though I do understand your point.
Yes.
But I just keep going back to, it feels to me like I'd say there's like a handful of topics that are still worth discussing right now in the NFL. I think who's going to start at quarterback for the New England Patriots is the number one issue that's still out there. I think anything injury related, like is Dak Prescott actually going to be healthy considering the guy hasn't thrown a ball in 12 months, 11 months or whatever it is, or hasn't thrown a ball without pain? Is Dak Prescott actually going to be healthy for the Cowboys when they start the season? I think that matters. I think from the Titans standpoint, is Sam Ficken actually going to be the kicker? And I don't mean this in he's the only guy that's out there right now. I mean this in the sense of, is there anybody else who's going to come about who you're going to take and you're going to put in there to be your kicker off of waivers? Or I think Eddie Pinheiro got released by Indianapolis the other day. You know, is there somebody there you're going to take to challenge Ficken? Or, and I think Ficken's been in the league for a while, because I want to say he kicked in the, I want to say there was like a 2017 game here where Greg the Leg got hurt for the Rams, and Ficken had to kick. Like, he was signed off the street and came in and kicked and whatever, and that was 2017. And there are
he did play 2 games in 2017 with the Rams.
See, there you go. And there are certain rules about veterans, and I don't know if he counts as a veteran or not, but that if you're a veteran and you're on the roster week 1, your salary's guaranteed for the rest of the year. And if that's the case and you don't trust Ficken, or you don't trust Ficken will be here for the rest of the year, then maybe you release him and you get a young guy that's on your roster week 1 and you try to get through the Arizona game. Like, that matters. Julio Jones returned to practice yesterday and didn't practice with the team. That matters. Ben Jones returned to practice. That matters. Dez Fitzpatrick might or might not make the team. That doesn't matter to me right now. Like, I understand that it'd be something that we probably would talk about, and I think there are some discussion points. If you got a general manager who's drafting in the first round one year and got to get rid of that guy, and then you're drafting in the 4th round and you trade up a year later and you got to get rid of that guy, I mean, that's probably worth discussing. But as far as, like, what matters right now in the NFL or what matters right now for the Titans, I feel like we're just kind of filling the time and not maybe analyzing what is really important for the football team. And like Bud Dupree's injury, we talked about this on Friday. Like, that matters. So if you told me that all the starting players were going to be ready to go for Arizona and that Vrabel would be ready to coach, which I assume that he will be since he has no symptoms and he's been double vaxxed and it would have been past the 10 days. Let's do it. You know what I mean? Like, and I know that sounds simple or that sounds easy, but I do feel like in what I've watched or what I've listened to, it's felt very in one ear, out the other, because it doesn't seem like it's a big deal as far as the Titans are concerned. Am I over the top with this? And I will even open this to Ian. Am I going against what I'm about by looking at this and not making a big deal out of certain things?
No, I mean, it is preseason. I think you have to take it all with a grain of salt, you know? Mm-hmm. Like, sure, some of the stuff matters, but, you know, what happens in the game doesn't necessarily really matter. And I think you're right. I think injuries right now is the main thing to kind of keep an eye on, especially if major injuries happen, right? I think that's always the biggest storyline out of, honestly, mostly every training camp is this which team comes down with some type of major possible season-altering injury. And knock on wood, as long as that doesn't happen, I think all status quo, and I think we're okay.
When it's June and we're talking OTAs and we're talking, you know, some rookies coming in, maybe some undrafted free agents, we're looking at rookie minicamp, then I think that's a fair conversation to have. Who could potentially have a future with the Titans? Mm-hmm. But it is August 25th. The Titans kick off in 2.5 weeks. Week 1 implications are what matters right now. The guys that are 3, 4, 5 positions down on the depth chart, they no longer matter in this conversation, because if it's not a realistic possibility that they are going to be out there week 1, then I'm sorry, I don't really care what they're doing right now. If, knock on all the wood, Derrick Henry goes down, he's unable to play week 1, then I'll start to look at the running back depth chart. Then we can look and see who is going to give the Titans the best possibility to win at the running back position. But on August 25th, if you're not playing week 1, I don't care.
By the way, I heard that Todd Downing said, I didn't hear Todd Downing say it. Mm-hmm. I heard that Todd Downing said that he was asked about Munyer at center. And remember last week when I said that Munyer
worst player on the team,
that of the 85 guys, he was 85th. And Todd Downing said he's been doing a good job. So remember the hot mic that caught me saying he was a BSer?
Yeah.
Yeah, he just said the guy, Tannehill threw him under the bus in Tampa Bay.
Nice guy Tannehill, who never does that.
Never throws anyone under the bus. Tannehill, what happened on the 2-minute drill? Yeah, it was a bad snap to my right, and I was expecting it in the center, and I got it to the right, and I didn't know what to do. And, in the future, I should just throw it away instead of take the sack, but it was a bad snap, so, it was a bad snap. Oh, was it a bad snap, Ryan? Was it a bad snap? Now, I will say this. I think this is like the yin and the yang here of how seriously I took those Tampa Bay practices. So I was all giddy about the first Tampa Bay practice because the Titans were great. I was so down on the second Tampa Bay practice because the Titans were terrible. And now, I mean, obviously my head was not in the game on Saturday, but even if it was, I mean, I'm not getting giddy about Buddy Calhoun intercepting Kyle Trask. I mean, that's just not a big deal.
I think because Tampa Bay practices, you were looking at some starters.
Yeah, I was looking at good
guys.
on good.
I was
looking at Mike Evans and Antonio Brown and Chris Godwin and Tom Brady and Harold Landry and Jeffrey Simmons. And, you're looking at good on good.
Right.
That is as close to a game as you're going to get. The players told you that. Byard and Saffold, they told you, hey, these are the games. And so as far as where the Titans sit right now, I think that it's kind of all just there's nothing you're going to learn other than Sam Ficken kicking the football. There is nothing that you're going to learn from a practice or a preseason game between now and the Arizona game that matters about anything, especially surrounding the Arizona game, other than who's healthy and who's not. Because they're not going to tell you anything. They're not going to show you anything. There's nobody who's going to stand out. I don't even think there's a last spot on the roster to be earned. I think the Titans have a pretty good idea who the 53 they plan to break with are. And now they're hoping that there's just no injuries, or that a guy, say like Darrington Evans, who's been hurt, that he's healthy enough that they don't have to carry the extra running back for him. But, yeah, I mean, I don't think – I think we are barreling towards the end. And we are right there up to the season. And that's why the big discussions people are getting mad about are things like, how dare Matt Nagy start Andy Dalton as opposed to playing Justin Fields, which honestly, I'll tell you, I could not give. I find the Chicago Bears to be the least interesting team in the NFL. I hate when they're on television because they're on television at least like 6 times a season between Sunday night, Monday night, the late 3:30 game, Thursday night football, because they play in the NFC, so they play
They're
Green
one of those
Bay,
blue
Dallas.
blood teams.
Oh, yeah. And so every year there's 2 Green Bay games that have to be on TV. Then there's going to be a Dallas or a Tampa Bay or a Rams, and that's got to be on TV. And it's just like, they can't get a first down ever, and I can't watch the Bears. But everybody's all worked up about this, and I'll tell you, I couldn't give 2 poops about the Chicago Bears and who's starting at quarterback, because I think they're going to suck no matter who their quarterback is. 615-737-1025 is our phone number. Boy, we are off and running today. 615-737-1025. Coming up next, Mike Vrabel has put out another unofficial depth chart. Oh, Mike Vrabel. I wonder who the backup coach is on this depth chart, because that's something people are trying to figure out.
That's not listed. That
Backup
probably
coach?
should be.
Backup coach?
Yeah.
I think it is now a position. And it should be a position because, not that I would expect Vrabel to test positive for COVID at some point during the season, considering that he's positive for COVID right now and has been double vaxxed and will probably get a booster. But other teams might have to worry about who the backup coach is this season. 615-737-1025 is our phone number, Stillman & Company. Caroline apparently has some strong reactions to the Mike Vrabel released depth chart. Don't look at me like that. Stillman & Company, we're live from the Wholesaling Studio, powered by RumbleOn.com. It's ESPN 1025 The Game, and we're streaming on the Game Nashville app.
Mike, can you kind of talk us what your days have been like the last couple and what you maybe seen from practices and what you're hearing from your coaches running the show?
Yeah, just continue to get up early and monitor, what's going on with the football team, with John, with Todd and Frank and everybody else. Squad meeting at 8:00. Try to get my message across, the things that I saw that occurred in practice, things that we're going to try to focus on that particular day or what was today. And then I continue to work on the schedule and things that I look forward to, and special teams and offense and defense. And then got to work out in when the players went to practice, got to work out in, and then watch tape after practice. Going to get ready to meet with these guys, meet with Todd about injuries, and then, discuss, practice and the schedule for the next couple of days with the coaches after that.
There you go. That was Mike Vrabel yesterday. As he is at home, he needs some negative COVID tests. Apparently, he told the fans at the kickoff luncheon today that he's got to get a negative test 48 hours before the game. If it does not come back negative, then, well, quite frankly, Mike Vrabel said that he'll be listening to Mike Keith call the game on Saturday.
That's so sad.
That he would be sitting there calling the game?
That he would just be listening to them calling the game.
Maybe.
Sad.
Maybe.
Like, you're not even invited to your own party.
Yeah, but see, here's the thing. You and I talked about this yesterday. I don't think it's a big deal that Vrabel has COVID. Like, I think Vrabel will be fine. I think the team will be fine.
The team will be
good.
fine. Vrabel will be fine. Fingers crossed. I think he will be fine. I mean, I'm really not that worried about it.
Now, I will say this. I think he's probably miserable right now.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, when he talks about how, it's nothing different. We just have meetings, and then, I get a workout in while they're doing the tape, and then I watch the tape, and then we have meetings, and I'm meeting with Todd, and he's literally just sitting there on the couch. Like, that he's sitting there on the couch, and I bet the first couple of days he tried to keep busy.
Uh-huh.
I think he just waits for that practice tape to get to him to watch it. And I bet you he's got Stretch texting him from the field saying what's going on. But it wouldn't shock me if Mike Vrabel was literally just sitting there, like, flipping through the channels on TV.
I think he's miserable because there's nothing he can do about it.
Right.
That there is so much going on that is out of his control. So, but he can't go to practice.
Nope.
He can't do anything about it. So he has to just sit there. And that is a miserable feeling. And I think it would be one thing if he really felt terrible, but he feels fine. So it's like, I know that feeling of like, I just want to go back. I want to get back to normal. Like, I feel fine. Why can't I just go and do what I want to do?
Mm-hmm. How much Arizona tape do you think he's watching?
All of it.
I bet he's watching a lot
all
of
the Arizona tape.
I bet he's watching a lot of Arizona tape. Okay, so he's got a new depth chart out, and the one thing I will never do is I will never point a finger in the direction of team PR when it comes to a team's depth chart placed in a media guide. A media guide, a game notes, whatever have you. Because I think at one point Vrabel said he put out a thing, was like, Robbie just put this out. Okay, Mike. I know PR people well enough, and I know these PR people well enough to know that they are not putting out a Titans depth chart.
No.
That did not have the Mike Vrabel / Stretch stamp of approval.
Like last time when he was like, oh, I haven't seen it yet. Let me take a look at it.
Right.
Okay,
They're not putting
Mike.
that in there. They are not putting that in there unless Mike Vrabel has officially stamped it himself. And even then, they might have to go check with somebody else. Like, if I see a depth chart in somewhere, I think the owner has looked at it before it has gone in there. So, you have some takes on the Vrabel depth chart. What are they?
I have a few questions. I have a few things that I like, a few things that I don't like.
Okay, do you want to just give them all to us at one time, or do you want to go one by one?
I'll go one by one. I'll point it out. You give me your thoughts, your reactions. First and foremost, Marcus Johnson listed as a wide receiver, too. I like it. Behind Julio Jones. I also see Nick Westbrook-Akina listed as a wide receiver, too, behind A.J. Brown. My initial thoughts on that, where I didn't think that Nick Westbrook-Akina was necessarily there.
Who would you have put there?
See, that's what I don't know. Mason Kinsey, maybe? Mason Kinsey is listed as a wide receiver 3.
Mason Kinsey's not going to make the team over Nick Westbrook-Akina. Like, I hope people understand it. Mason Kinsey is not – he's not an option to make this football team.
He is a preseason game darling.
No,
though.
he's a practice. This is what I think the plan is, right? I think it's going to be A.J. Brown, Julio Jones, and Chester Rogers as your starting three. Now, they could put Reynolds
Josh
in
Reynolds
there.
is currently listed,
Right.
but Chester Rogers is wide receiver 2 behind Josh Reynolds. So,
And remember that they signed Josh Reynolds to be the number 2 receiver,
And then
they
was
bumped him to 3.
3.
So if you put him at 4 behind Chester Rogers, then you're really going to have a problem. And it's a problem that you don't need to have yet. You know, this may be one at the Arizona game where he's listed as the starter, and then all of a sudden Chester Rogers just starts running out a lot more on snaps.
Right.
But that's the way I think it's going to unfold. Is I think it's going to be A.J. Brown, Julio Jones, Chester Rogers. And I wouldn't be stunned if Reynolds was ahead of Rogers. The other guy's going to make the team, Reynolds/Rogers. The other guy makes the team. And then you've got all kinds of different options. Just throwing stuff over here. Then you got all kinds of different options as far as how you want to fill out the wide receiver position.
Because you assumed 6 or 7 wide receivers they'll retain.
Probably.
And they currently have like 10.
And I think that Des Fitzpatrick gets IR'd. So, broken pinky toenail, IR, forget about him.
No, not the broken pinky toenail.
Red shirt year.
No.
So a red shirt year for Des Fitzpatrick. So take him out. So now you got 4. Westbrook Akina, I think, is 5. He's your gunner on special teams. Maybe you take one more if you do. It's Batson, but I'm not sure
No
they
Marcus
will
Johnson?
take. Oh, yeah. It's Johnson, then Batson. So that's what they're going to do. Kinsey is your backup slot guy. So Rogers is your slot guy and your punt returner. Batson, you assume, gets claimed by somebody else, or he doesn't want to come back on your practice squad where he's lived for the last 4 years. So assume you lose Batson. Kinsey goes to your practice squad, and he's the guy you call up if something happens to Rogers and you need a punt returner. That's what Mason Kinsey, that's what he is. But he is not an option to make this roster. The same now with Racey McMath. He's not an option to make this roster, but you try to sneak him through the practice squad, and then if something happens to Westbrook Akina, you elevate McMath for a game, and he goes to the gunner position. But that's how that's going to shake out. So I'm not surprised that Westbrook Akina is listed as wide receiver 2.
One question I do kind of have on this is, when it comes to how they're listing the first team and all this kind of stuff, they're listing 3 wide receivers and 1 tight end. Did they do that last year? I feel like it was more 2 tight ends, 2 wide receivers. Can we read into anything as far as what they might be trying to do offensively at all this year?
I'm going to say no, just because that's them. Like,
And
I don't
think
they
the wide
wanna tell
receiver
people that.
depth is so much deeper than it has been in the past, and the tight end depth is so much shallower than it has been in the past.
Yes and no. I mean, the first year Vrabel was the coach. Delaney Walker broke his leg the first game of the year. And, like, Jonnu Smith was very much a work in progress. Ferkser was a practice squad guy.
Right.
Michael Pruitt came off of the Texans practice squad. I mean, it was really a ragtag bunch that ended up being pretty good, but that's probably what you're dealing with right here. I mean, I think the tight end position, I think you're going to see a lot of 2 tight end sets, and it's going to be Swaim or Stalker.
Still think you'll see a lot, huh?
Yeah, I do. I do, because I just don't think they trust Ferkser to block. So what they'll do is they'll have both of them block. And it's like, okay, Ferkser and Swaim are in on the same play, or Ferkser and Stalker, if Swaim's not healthy, are in on the same play. But I think you'll still see a lot of 2 tight end sets from the Titans.
And that's another thing is Jeff Swim being listed as tight end 1 over Anthony Ferkser. What do you make? Does that even do anything for you?
I think it's Vrabel trying to be, I think he's trying
Cute?
to take, I think he's trying to take a little wooden stick and, point in the side of Ferkser just to say, hey, don't get too comfortable. Like AJ and Julio have starting spots. You don't. So don't get too comfortable. But I think that they did that in the last one. So I think that, like, that novelty wore off after he did it the first time.
Right. They did that the first time, and I thought, okay, maybe that's like a little bit of a red flag, but I didn't really think anything of it. But now it's getting closer. I find it a little bit odd.
Okay, what else do you not like about the depth chart?
Caleb Farley is very far down the cornerback depth chart. Is that the same thing? That's a little poking stick? Or is that like, hey, we're taking it day by day with Caleb Farley's injury?
Show me the highest ranked rookie on the depth chart.
Dylan Radins.
Dylan Radins at what spot?
Right guard 2.
Okay. So Vrabel, I mean, rookies have to earn their spot.
He is the only rookie
and-
not listed on the third string.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
that's what that is.
Yeah.
I mean, that's just the typical Vrabel, rookies got to earn their spot kind of thing.
Do you like that?
No, I don't really care. It reminds me of there was like a Lawrence Taylor documentary I watched one time, and Bill Parcells put Lawrence Taylor on the third team, and the first day of practice, and they were like, "You put Lawrence Taylor on the third team," and then I guess on the second play, Lawrence Taylor did so well on the third team in one play that he went up to the second team. Then he did so well in one play that he went up to the first team. So 3 plays into practice, Lawrence Taylor's on the first team, but Lawrence Taylor didn't start on the first team, and that's
Right.
that, Parcells. Jack Conklin was the backup right tackle, like early on in his career, and Byron Bell broke his ankle, and then immediately Jack Conklin was starting. But Conklin was always going to be the right tackle
Right.
for the Titans as a rookie. So I don't read too much into that one either.
That's
so
fair.
So you got Vrabeled.
Well, I didn't necessarily think that it was an actual thing. I just thought that it was interesting.
I think
I don't think I got Vrabeled.
I think you got a little Vrabeled.
I don't think I did.
I think just a little bit. 615-737-1025. We'll get to your reaction. 615-737-1025. Plus, apparently, a little COVID concern as some Titan players are concerned. We'll get to that coming up next. Plus, one element of the roster making that I don't know how I feel about it. We'll touch on that as well. Stillman and Company right here on ESPN 1025 The Game. We are delivered by TriStar Moving. 615-737-1025 is our phone number. Who watches the show? I mean, I saw, obviously Monday's show was very well watched, very well streamed, very well listened to. But you can watch the show on YouTube. So if you're like Mike Vrabel right now and you're stuck on the couch, just pull up. Everybody's got a smart TV now. Just pull up YouTube. Put in Stillman and Company. It'll say live right there. Just click it. Boom. Click it, and you will see our very pretty faces all in live time. And if you want to win a pair of tickets to Dave Chappelle and Joe Rogan at Bridgestone Arena on Friday, September 3rd, head over to YouTube and subscribe to the 1025 The Game YouTube page, and you'll enter to win your way into the show. One winner will be chosen on Monday. All you got to do is hit subscribe. That's it. So it's really no skin off your rear end. And you can go see Dave Chappelle and Joe Rogan. You can enter to win those tickets, and you can see yours truly and their very, very pretty face. 615-737-1025, Stillman and Company. It's ESPN 1025 The Game. Stillman and Company, Chris Sanders will join us in just a little bit. His thoughts with the latest on the Titans. So I thought about this the other day. You know, I think everybody now, COVID is taking off. I told you COVID, the original COVID that we had to deal with last year, has been enhanced. They have added Andrew Luck at quarterback. Mm-hmm. It's called the Delta variant. It's not good. Even for vaccinated people like me, there's a chance you can still get it. And but there's not a very high risk of you getting it and ending up in the hospital or you getting it and dying if you are vaccinated, where there is a much higher risk of those things if you are not. But apparently Ryan Suckup, former Titans kicker, has tested positive for COVID-19. And apparently some Titan players went out to dinner with Ryan Suckup in Tampa Bay. Not surprising. Here's what Vrabel said when asked about if there's cause for concern. Take a listen.
Yeah, Coach, glad you're feeling a bit better. Obviously, with contact tracing, there are certain players that have been placed on COVID reserve, but those guys who went to dinner with Ryan Suckup, have they been identified and you have their status?
I'm not aware of who went to dinner with Ryan Suckup, so you'll have to fill me in on what that report was.
Well, the report just said Bruce Arians actually said that Ryan Suckup, he tested positive and certain players went to dinner. He went to dinner with certain Titans players. They didn't say who it was or anything like that, but obviously, guys are being placed on the reserve COVID. I don't know or believe they have ties to Suckup, but I wasn't sure if there was a correlation or if that has been identified within the building.
Yeah, I'm not really sure. All we can focus on is our guys here and making sure that the communication with the NFL and Dr. Sills, I'm really proud of our guys from this morning on saying, hey, we're going to take these steps and we're going to get everybody, another rapid test, whether they're vaccinated or not, try to keep our meetings at a social distance and just really be proactive. Just here for the next couple of days, just so that we can make sure that whatever it is that is happening gets taken care of.
Okay, I agree with the second part Vrabel said. Now, you said Vrabel was lying when he said he didn't know about the Ryan Suckup dinner.
Of course he did.
You think he's lying?
I think he's lying.
Why?
Because why wouldn't he know? I feel like, if the players want to go out to dinner and he didn't know about it, whatever. But whenever there's a positive COVID case involved, I think the head coach of the team that could possibly be affected would know. I think he just didn't want to talk about it.
I think there's maybe something to that. I also think that, didn't it sound the way TD set it up, that Arians was kind of trying to make it sound like the Titans brought Ryan Suckup COVID, and that it's not Arians' fault, and it's not the Bucs' fault, and it's the Titans who brought Ryan Suckup COVID. Now, I didn't hear what Arians said, and honestly, the time and day and age and everything we're living in, it doesn't really matter who brought it.
That's kind of what I think is really doesn't matter. I feel like the most important thing is the fact that anyone tested positive at all.
But in the spring of last year, remember we were blaming China and China was blaming us.
Uh-huh.
China was saying that our military brought it to them and that's what started it. And now China wants America to investigate the University of North Carolina, Chapel Hill, because apparently there's a lab that just has the worst safety procedures and that's where COVID could have started. And so now there's finger pointing between us and China, which has been going on the whole time.
Right.
And now there's Arians pointing the fingers at the Titans players that went to dinner with Suckup. And then Vrabel wants no part of that to sit there and say, I have no idea. And I don't know. I'm a little skeptical of it. I guess I'm not really sure I care. I think we've all been close contacts at some point in the last, whatever. There's somebody that has COVID and you're like, wow, I was around them the other day. And you're like, uh-oh, better go get me a test. I'll say this. I went to Florida last week. I got tested at the Titans facility on Monday. They only bother you if you got a positive test. Mm-hmm. Nobody bothered me. So I'm guessing I'm negative, or at least I was negative as of Monday morning. I feel pretty good. Knock on wood.
Right, fingers crossed.
I'm glad I got my test and I'm negative, but I don't know.
But it's nice to know at some point.
I was at one time negative.
Yes, it's nice to know. That's a little bit of security.
Doesn't mean that I'm negative now.
Well, I hope you
that
are.
I'll be negative tomorrow. Doesn't mean that I'll be, but yes.
Tested negative and feeling positive.
Hey, you know what? Yes, something to that extent. But are you worried like that the Titans could be facing a COVID outbreak between the suck-up dinner and now the Vrabel and everything else?
I think there's a few things involved here. I think first and foremost, the timing of it doesn't make me really that worried because let's say if there is a COVID outbreak, then we're still 2.5 weeks removed from when it really matters. So, of course, it would be unfortunate if there are some Titans players that test positive, that have symptoms, whatever it may be, but we are still in a comfortable gap away from the regular season that I wouldn't be throwing my hands up and terrified that it would affect the regular season. But I think also this could potentially be important, and this is where vaccinations come into play, that if this was, let's fast forward 2 weeks, 3 weeks, a month, if this happened a month from now, then if the Titans are vaccinated at a certain rate, that Ryan Succop went to dinner with vaccinated players, and either they test negative, then great, 0.1 for the vaccine. If they do test positive and they are vaccinated, then that becomes so much less of an issue for the Titans because the incubation period is so much shorter than if they weren't. So at this point, no, I'm not worried because it hasn't affected the Titans yet, and we're far enough away from the regular season to where it's not going to affect things, fingers crossed. But I think that it is something to keep in mind moving forward because it will be. I hope it won't, but let's be realistic here. It will be an issue moving forward for the entire NFL, not just the Titans.
Chris Sanders joins us next. His thoughts on preseason game number 2, the position battle at wide receiver. How worried is he about the Arizona game? Chris Sanders will join us next. Stillman and Company right here on ESPN 102.5 The Game. Let me tell all the fine folks out there that ESPN 94.9 is the official English radio home of the Nashville Soccer Club. Listen in Saturday. Nashville SC takes on Atlanta. Pregame 2:15. The match is at 2:30 on ESPN 94.9. Stillman and Company, the Titans getting set for the third and final preseason game. That'll air Saturday night on News 2. Didn't see a lot of big-time players on offense in either of the two games. I doubt we'll see them in the third game. We did see defensive starters in both games. They didn't play much, but we saw them. And I doubt they'll play very much in the third game. In fact, Matt Nagy, the head coach of the Chicago Bears, says Justin Fields, who is their backup, will start this game. Andy Dalton's the starting quarterback. Chris Sanders joins us now on the program, former Titans receiver. Chris, this time of the year, training camp's been going on. Practice is nothing new. You've been there for about a month. How much of this is just boredom now until the first game against Arizona, especially for established players like you were when you were on the Titans?
It is boredom. I mean, because everybody wants to see Julio Jones, A.J. Brown, Ferguson, and Tannehill. They all want to see that. But the interesting thing is going on. You kind of alluded about it earlier about, the competition at wide receiver. That's the thing that I'm looking at, because you look at 1999 when I was with the Tennessee Titans, we had a lot of receivers. We had me, Derek Mason, Matthew Thigpen, Isaac Byrd, Joey King. We had all those guys. We were all battling for a position. So the good thing about it, even though a lot of stuff that we don't want to hear about, but the good thing about it is there's a fight of who's going to be at wide receiver. I mean, is Josh Reynolds going to be here? Is Dez Fitzpatrick going to be here? So that's the thing that I want to see. So even though a lot of boring stuff is going on, but the interesting thing that's going on right now is the battle of who's going to be the wide receivers for the Tennessee Titans.
Okay, handicap it for me. Who's going to be wide receivers for the Titans?
Well, everybody knows Julio Jones, A.J. Brown. This is hard. I'm going to go with Dez Fitzpatrick. I'm going to go with Batson. I'm going to go with Chester Rogers. I'm going to go with Kinsey. Those are the guys I'm going to go with. The reason why I say they keep Fitzpatrick is because they traded up to get a fourth rounder. The reason why I say that Reynolds is not going to be here is because he's been in the league for a while, and I think the upside is better for Fitzpatrick as opposed to Reynolds. Reynolds hasn't done anything really this year. I mean, he's been hurt. He's been in the game. He makes one or two plays, but I just think that there's no difference between Reynolds and Fitzpatrick. So that's the reason why I think they keep Fitzpatrick.
Well, I think there's 1,000 yards in the NFL difference between Fitzpatrick and Reynolds. I mean, Reynolds has been a solid number 3 wide receiver in the NFL for 4 years, and Dez Fitzpatrick hasn't caught an NFL pass.
Right, but you traded up to get a fourth rounder, and I agree with you 100%. But in my opinion, I just don't think Reynolds could be. Just say if one of those big time receivers got hurt, A.J. Brown or Julio Jones, if one of those guys go down, could he be an impact player if he was the second wide receiver? He's been a third receiver all his career. So, and I'm not disrespecting him. I'm not hating him or anything. I'm just looking at the upside of what we're looking at. I mean, if you look at Josh Reynolds, you look at Fitzpatrick, there's basically no difference. They're just guys.
Oh, I think there's a total difference.
How?
One guy's played in the NFL and knows how to do it, and the other guy can't even catch in one-on-ones.
Stop.
I mean, I'm serious. Dez Fitzpatrick had dropped the ball 3 times in a row in the warm-up drills.
Okay, you're doing something right if they draft up to get you in the 4th round. You see what I'm saying? I understand. Coming in as a rookie, it's kind of tough. So he's going to make rookie mistakes. He's going to drop the ball sometime. I just think that if he gets a little bit of confidence, he's going to be okay. Because I've been looking at both of these receivers because I kind of figured I was going to get answered these questions. I look, they're basically the same player.
Reynolds had 52 catches for 618 yards last year.
I know because he's been in the NFL, and I agree with you. He's got more experience. I understand he has more catches. I understand he played longer than Fitzpatrick. But I'm talking about the upside. Can Reynolds be a number 1 wide receiver?
No, but we all thought before they traded for Julio Jones.
Right.
They thought he was going to be their number 2 wide receiver.
He's a rookie.
I'm talking about Reynolds.
Oh, you're talking about Reynolds? Oh,
yes. They thought he was going to be their number 2 wide receiver this year.
Okay.
And they didn't draft a guy. They didn't draft Elijah Moore. They didn't draft Rashad Bateman. They didn't draft Rondale Moore. Who else did they not draft? They didn't draft.
In terms of wide receivers?
Yeah.
Yeah.
A lot of players that they could have drafted.
I mean, we talked about all of them. They didn't draft them. They didn't draft those guys because Reynolds was their number 2. And you're telling me you're going to take Mason Kinsey, a guy that you can sneak through to the practice squad? You're going to take Mason Kinsey over Josh Reynolds, a guy that in April and May
Absolutely.
and until June that you were
Absolutely.
willing to go into the season with as your number 2 wide receiver? That doesn't make any sense.
Absolutely. You know why I want to take Kinsey? Is because he's versatile. He can play in the slot and he can play outside. Okay, let me ask you a question. Who have we been talking about the whole camp? Chester Rogers, and we've been talking about Kinsey. Have we said anything about Reynolds? Reynolds is – I'm not – listen, I'm
we
not
haven't said anything about Julio Jones. You want to cut him?
The only thing we've been talking about is Reynolds been on the bike. That's all we've been talking about.
Where's Julio been, Chris? Where's Julio been?
Hey,
Chris Sanders.
Okay.
Chris Sanders, would you rather have Mason McMath or Julio Jones? You tell me.
Julio Jones is a Hall of Famer. That's totally different, man. Listen, I study both of these guys. I'm looking. He's no different from Fitzpatrick. He's no difference. There's a little bit of explosiveness, kind of, but I don't see him as a number 1 wide receiver. I just don't. So
talking about Reynolds or Fitzpatrick?
I'm talking about Reynolds.
But they did not pay Reynolds to be a number 1 wide receiver.
I know, but just say if one of those big dogs go down, who would you insert in there?
Well, I'm going to ask you this question.
Sure.
If you're playing, let's pick a random team in the NFL, the Baltimore Ravens, and it's the playoffs, and your number 2 wide receiver gets hurt, and you are down by a touchdown with a 2-minute drive, and they've got their star corners on A.J. Brown.
Okay.
And so you need somebody else out there. Would you rather have Josh Reynolds or Khalif Raymond, Nick Westbrook-Akina, Cam Batson, and all those players they had out there last year that couldn't move the football? And I'll take Josh Reynolds, a guy who has played significant snaps in the NFL on a good team and a good offense and caught 52 passes last year. And I will take him over all the guys they put out there last year in the playoff game. And I will certainly take him over a guy in Des Fitzpatrick.
Last year, right?
Yes.
We're talking about this year, dangummit.
You're going to take Batson on the roster.
I would take what?
You're going to take Batson on the roster. You're going to take those guys that were out there. Mason Kinsey's a practice squad guy. No. He'll be on the practice squad this year. I'm telling you, he'll be on the practice squad.
I guarantee you that I know Kinsey's going to. I bet you Kinsey and Chester Rogers are going to be a part of this offense.
Chester Rogers, yes. Kinsey, no. Not until he elevates off the practice squad.
Okay. So you think that he is a practice squad guy?
Yes, I believe he will be on the practice squad this year for the Tennessee Titans.
Tell me why. Explain it. I got to hear this because I want to be like E.F. Hutton. Everybody wants to know. Tell me why Kinsey is just a practice squad player.
He's not big enough. He's not strong enough. He's not fast enough. He doesn't catch the ball well enough.
Stop it.
Nobody else in the league is going to claim him when you release him and put them on their active rosters.
Okay. Oh no. I'm talking about his skill set. Tell me why he does. He's not. He'll be a practice squad player.
He's not big enough. He's not fast enough. He's not strong enough. He doesn't catch the ball well enough. I mean,
Okay. Tell me. What did he do in the Atlanta game?
Caught the ball on third stringers.
What did he do against Tampa Bay?
Caught the ball against third stringers.
You're talking about third stringers like they're playing the Brentwood Blaze or they're playing the Franklin Cowboys. These are guys that are 1%ers, Jared. 1%ers. That means they're the best of the best. So even if they're the 12th string, that means they're the best of the best.
Right. But see, Josh Reynolds did it against – Josh Reynolds caught the ball 52 times last year for 618 yards against first stringers from the Seattle Seahawks.
Okay. But why did he never crack the starting lineup?
Because they got Cooper Kupp and Robert Woods and Brandon Cooks and all those guys, the Rams that threw the ball.
So he's not good enough to be if he's that good, so he's not good enough to be the second guy?
On the Rams, no, he's not.
See, that's what I'm saying. So what makes
you think Mason Kinsey's going to crack the roster and play wide receiver for the Rams?
Garrett, I think he would.
No, he would not, Chris. You know better than that.
Dude, I'm looking at technique, man, and what he does. What Kinsey does is he brings a different element to the Tennessee Titans team. You have Julio Jones that's going to make the tough catch down the field. You got A.J. Brown who's a run out of the catch. You got Kinsey and Chester Rogers that can run those choice routes to win this 3rd and 5. He gets 10 or 11 yards after the catch to get open.
Chris,
That's the
do you
difference.
think Mason Kinsey, if you put him out there, week 2 on the road at Seattle,
Yep.
do you think Mason Kinsey could catch 8 passes for 94 yards and average 11.75 yards per reception?
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Against the Seattle Seahawks?
Absolutely.
Chris.
Absolutely. I'm not looking on what his numbers look like. I'm looking at what he's doing now. I mean, okay, we can say the same thing about Chester Rogers. Chester Rogers has been bouncing around the league, right or wrong. But why?
He's at least made some plays in the NFL.
Oh, yeah.
But I'm also not saying that they're going to keep Chester Rogers over Josh Reynolds. They're going to keep them both.
I just think that the upside, this is just my opinion. I know everybody's, I want to go back to Fitzpatrick. I know everybody's down on him because he's dropping a couple of balls. But there's something that J-Rob, there's something that Mike Vrabel, and there's something that they saw in this kid to go up and go get him. That's what I'm saying.
I mean, they drafted Isaiah Wilson in the 1st round. They saw something there, too. I hear you. I think this is what I think is going to happen. Chris Sanders is with us.
Yeah.
I think they're going to IR Des Fitzpatrick. They're going to redshirt him this year. So he will be on the team, but he won't be able to play. And next year, they'll say clean slate, start the next year off. I think they're going to keep A.J. Brown, Julio Jones, Josh Reynolds, Chester Rogers. And I think Marcus Johnson or Nick Westbrook-Akina will also be there. One of them, probably Westbrook-Akina's got to be your gunner. So I think then they're going to try to slip Mason Kinsey and Racey McMath to the practice squad. And if anybody gets hurt, specifically Rogers, they'll elevate Kinsey up to be that punt returner. That's what I think is going to happen.
I don't think McMath is even going to be on the practice squad. I don't think he hasn't done anything. And when you come in as a rookie, you got to show up on the film all day long. And I want the listeners to understand. I'm talking football. I'm not being negative. I study receivers, so I want to make that clear. But I want you guys to understand too that they may keep 6, they may keep 7. I don't know. I mean, your guess is good as mine. But I think that if they do keep 7, it's because they don't need. They already got depth at other positions. But if they need help at other positions, I think they may keep 6. So I don't know. I mean, it's a toss up. But in my opinion, I don't think Josh Reynolds is going to be here. And when that doesn't happen, I want you to give me an apology, and I want you to sing the Ohio State fight song for everybody on the air.
See, I'm not even a big Reynolds guy right now after what I've seen in camp. Not a huge fan, but at the same time, he's going to make the team. I will give Chris Sanders a formal apology. I will not sing the Ohio State fight song, but I will give Chris Sanders a formal apology if Josh Reynolds gets released. Chris, appreciate you as always.
You, man.
I hear
love
you will be a part of our game birthday on Friday, so we look forward to that as well.
Hey, love you guys.
Yeah,
Y'all
take care, Chris.
Okay, bye-bye.
Chris Sanders, one of the best guys I know, period. With one of the worst takes I know, period. Coming up next, we're going to have to discuss Chris's wide receiver take. I mean, he's going to take Mason Kinsey over Josh Reynolds. I don't think – we'll save it. 615-737-1025 is our phone number, the FanDuel Sportsbook app. That is my official sportsbook app. You know I love the FanDuel Sportsbook app. Former MMA champion Tyron Woodley enters the boxing ring this Sunday to take on YouTuber turned boxer Jake Paul. And FanDuel Sportsbook is giving new customers exclusive 30-1 odds on either fighter to win. I'd say I'd take the guy who's actually a fighter to win the fight.
I don't know. I heard YouTube really can prepare you pretty well.
I'm going to take Woodley in this fight. That's right. Now is the perfect time to give FanDuel a shot because you can win $150 on a $5 bet. FanDuel is always hooking you up with exclusive odds boosts, great promotions, and much, much more. That's why they're America's #1 sportsbook app. So don't miss your chance to win $150 on a $5 bet on either fighter to win. Just download the FanDuel Sportsbook app and sign up with the promo code JGM to get in on all the action. That's promo code JGM. 21 and older and present in Tennessee. Odds boost available for new users only. Must wager on a designated boost market. $10 first deposit required. Max bonus $150. Risk-free bet refund issues. Non-withdrawable site credit that expires in 7 days. Max refund $10. Restrictions apply. See full terms for both offers at FanDuel.com/sportsbook. Gambling problem? Call Tennessee Redline 1-800-889-9789. Stillman and Company is delivered by TriStar Moving. Chris Sanders just had some wild takes. His wide receiver room for the Titans: A.J. Brown, Julio Jones, Chester Rogers, Des Fitzpatrick, Mason Kinsey, and Cam Batson. So he's not taking Josh Reynolds.
He's not taking Marcus Johnson.
He's not taking Marcus Johnson, and he's not taking Nick Westbrook-Akina.
Joe Rex Rodakina.
Joe Westbrook-Akina.
Yeah.
So he's not taking him. And I told you all, look, I'm not impressed with Josh Reynolds right now either. He's been hurt, I get it. But so is Julio. Julio hasn't done anything. And the Titans went into the draft with Josh Reynolds as their number 2 wide receiver. And they didn't draft a wide receiver in the first round.
Or second.
And they didn't draft a wide receiver in the second round. And they didn't draft a wide receiver with 2 picks in the third round. And now Chris Sanders is ready to get rid of him in place of Mason Kinsey, who, again, I'm telling you all will be on the practice squad. Now, I've said my piece. What's your reaction to Chris's hot take?
I mean, I surely don't agree with it. And there was a texter texted in, phone lines driven by WilsonCountyHyundai.com, saying, Reynolds greater than Des Fitzpatrick. Well, no offense to Lop, our texter. Well, duh. Like,
well, you tell Chris that.
Yeah, I mean, that doesn't feel like a hot take, and I was reading it and thinking, well, yeah, no, obviously. So it's crazy to me that Chris was so staunch in that belief, that he really believed in Des Fitzpatrick. And I'm not going to say that I don't necessarily, but I'm not going to say that, I believe so much in Des Fitzpatrick that I'm ready to kick Josh Reynolds to the curb. To your point, a guy that the Titans were counting on to be wide receiver 2. And take Des Fitzpatrick over him. Des Fitzpatrick, who really has not done really anything that's wowed me in practice. I know he had a good preseason game against Tampa Bay, but nothing that's made me think, let's kick Josh Reynolds to the curb.
I mean, Josh Reynolds is supposed to play. Like, I want everybody to know that. Like, when Josh Reynolds was signed, it was to play.
Right.
He had 8 catches for 96 yards on 10 targets against the Seattle Seahawks last year. Like, Josh Reynolds can play in the NFL. Can Josh Reynolds start in the NFL? The Titans were willing to take a chance that he could.
He's not a wide receiver 1.
But he did step up. He had 5 touchdown passes when Cooper Kupp got hurt with a knee injury in 2018. I mean, Chris used to, and I love Chris, but every now and then he'd say some crazy things. And I forget the way that Floyd would be so eloquent and gentle and nice about disagreeing with Chris. But, I mean,
It gets to a point, though.
Like, that's a take. Like, that is, Chris used to, every now and then, Chris will have some takes on the pregame show that I used to be like, what? And I forget how Floyd used to diffuse the situation, but he must have done it so eloquently. Ian, what do you think about Chris's wide receiver room?
Well, he had an interesting angle as far as he wasn't really considering who would or would not be claimed. Right, he almost wanted to disregard whether or not you could sneak a player through to the practice squad. He was kind of going based just solely on
who the best
skill sets and, looking at the players and not looking like, who's a known commodity and who's going to be snatched up if you release him. So that was a little bit interesting. And as far as that goes, like, he might have a point, but that's just not, that's not how the league's going to look at some of these players when it comes down to the depth chart time, Like, he might have a point as far as skill sets and how that fits, but, they look into who would be able to pick up and who wouldn't be and who would be able to sneak to the practice squad and who you couldn't and all that kind of stuff. My question is, I keep hearing that most people anticipate if the Titans were to release Des Fitzpatrick that he would most likely be picked up by somebody on waivers and put on their 53-man roster, correct?
I think that is the sentiment that a lot of people have.
Yeah, and I just wonder why so many people feel that way 100%. Because I'm not 100% sold that if you release a rookie wide receiver who has not really flashed much and who has, reportedly struggled during the preseason, how many teams are just going to be lining up to sign that person to only make them inactive for multiple weeks on their 53-man roster while they start to figure some stuff out.
Well, and to your point about that, I mean, I'll compare this to the Predator players that nobody wants on the team anymore. And everybody's like, they should get rid of Johansen and they should get rid of Duchesne. And it's like,
well, that's a good idea.
Well, but like nobody wants those guys.
Right.
And as we say with Des Fitzpatrick, well, you spent a 4th-round pick on that guy. So the Predators gave $64 million to Ryan Johansen, and nobody in the NHL wants him. Nobody wants him. You offered him to Seattle. Would you like to have Ryan Johansen? No, we would not. Like, that is, I think, along the same lines that, to Ian's point, you know, if Des Fitzpatrick can't get it here, where you've got skin in the game, you're invested in him, and he can't get it done here, and that's a cap hit you're going to have to eat, I believe, for, you know, it won't be a big cap hit, but it's a cap hit you're going to have to eat, I believe, for like 3 or 4 years. Then why in the world would they take that guy, claim that guy, put him on their team, and to Ian's point, have to deactivate him every single week? That's an interesting angle. I think they're going to redshirt Fitzpatrick. I think they're going to come up with some injury. They're going to put him on IR. I think they're going to release Kinsey and Batson, and one of them's getting through to the practice squad, and that's your backup punt returner. And because I think Ian brought up a great point. Who would get claimed by other teams? I think Westbrook Akina gets claimed by another team.
He could.
If you were to release him.
He's a depth guy.
And he can play special teams.
Mm-hmm.
I think
that's a big added value.
I don't know about Chester Rogers or Marcus Johnson if they would get claimed by another team because they were both on your practice squad last year.
Mm-hmm.
So every other team in the league could have had them, and they didn't. So I wonder if Marcus Johnson's recent injury is going to keep him off the active roster with the hopes that you can then sneak him through to your practice squad like you did last year. I think Rodgers has probably played well enough in the preseason and in the practices with Tampa Bay that he probably gets claimed, but I think they need him anyways, so he's on the team. But I don't think that, to Ian's point, I think there's maybe a chance Fitzpatrick gets claimed, but I'd be shocked if Batson gets claimed, and I'd be really shocked if Kinsey or McMath got claimed, and I feel fairly certain they won't. And I think it's probably 50-50 Batson gets claimed. And I could see like Atlanta or, you know, one of those kind of schemes picking up Batson, but I think Batson's a replacement level player.
And I think you pick him up if you have a wide receiver go down with injury and you need a little bit more depth added to your team. I could see that's a quality pickup.
I mean, I would argue that keeping Mason Kinsey over Josh Reynolds or keeping Des Fitzpatrick and his, you used a 4th round pick on him over a Josh Reynolds would be like protecting Tanner Jeannot over Callie Yarncroke. A replacement level player for a guy who's actually played in the NHL. A replacement level player, a practice squad guy for a guy who was a number 3 wide receiver on a playoff team last year with Jared Goff as his quarterback.
I think there are only currently on the Titans roster, there are only 2 other wide receivers that I would protect over Josh Reynolds, and they are Julio Jones and A.J. Brown.
See, I think Chester Rogers I would take over Josh Reynolds right now simply because I know Rogers can contribute right now and can contribute in the punt game.
Mm-hmm.
Reynolds, I haven't seen it, but it doesn't mean it's not there because I haven't seen it with Julio Jones either. Let's get your takes on it. 615-737-1025 is our phone number, 615-737-1025. We are live today in the wholesaling studio powered by RumbleOn.com here on Stillman and Company. And also coming up next, speaking of wide receivers, Harry Douglas, former Mike Mularkey favorite. Boy, did Mike Mularkey like Harry Douglas. Harry Douglas has a Titans wide receiver take. We'll get into that coming up next as well. But first, Caroline wants to tell you all about BetUS.
Yes, I do want to tell everyone about BetUS because it is very important what I have to tell everyone about BetUS. It's very, very important, and I'm excited to tell everyone.
Got to get that read up.
Yep. Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
Yep.
Hey,
it is.
2 of live reads for Caroline Fenton. Congratulations to Caroline.
Thank
Welcome
you
to the big leagues, kid.
very much because I'm very excited to tell everyone about my official sports book, and that is BetUS. So football is back finally, and it's time to get in on all of the betting action. So BetUS has been America's favorite sports book for over 25 years, and that's exactly why I endorse BetUS. So 25 years, that is a long time, longer than I've been alive. So you get a sports book with integrity and longevity, and you need to know that you're going to get paid, and BetUS offers everything, including live betting, MMA, golf, horses, esports, all kinds of crazy bets. You name it, they've got it. Call BetUS today, and they will walk you through setting up an account. Their number is 1-800-79-BETUS. That is 1-800-79-BETUS. Nobody in the industry gives bigger bonuses than BetUS. So join now, mention GAME, G-A-M-E, and you can get up to 200% in bonuses on your first deposit. Literally nobody beats that. I bet at BetUS, and so should you. So go to BetUS.com, join today, put in promo code GAME for 200% in bonuses on your first deposit. That is BetUS.com.
Yeah, it's nice to kind of see him on the practice field moving around a little bit. Obviously, been waiting for it. Excited to get him out here whenever he's ready. So, a lot of work to do still with him. We've talked through a lot of looks. We've seen on tape, seen other guys take the reps and been able to talk through the spacing, the timing, and now it's just a matter of being able to come out here and do it in person and make that connection.
Different for everybody, but how long does it take? If you got your whole crew out there a week before the season opener, or you feel like you're in good shape there, or do you need more time?
I think it's one of those things that the more reps you get, the better you're going to get. I think I'm going to feel confident no matter what happens going into week one that we'll find a way to make the plays. But like anything, the more practice you get, the more reps you get, the more comfortable you get with one another and kind of settle in.
There you go. That was Ryan Tannehill talking about Julio Jones. They're all going to tell us, yeah, it's fine. Julio barely practices. It'll be fine. That's the way they're going to tell us. And they might be right.
They might be right, but I'm still a little bit concerned about it. He practiced yesterday. He was in pads yesterday.
Okay, so a former ex-Titan, and if we were asking Mike Mularkey, he would tell us an all-time Titan great, Harry Douglas, who I believe caught 4 passes in his career with the Tennessee Titans.
Great guy. Love him.
Made about $8 million, maybe more than that, to catch about 3 passes for the Titans.
That's a pricey pass.
Oh, it was. Ian, you remember it.
Coach Harry. Coach
Dudley. Harry. Mike Mularkey used to be like, he's like a coach in the room. I'm like, then make him a coach. He doesn't play. He can't catch. What are you doing? And Mike Mularkey loved him. He loved it. That was one of those ones Floyd couldn't even defend. Like, we used to laugh about it, and he was like, yeah, And this was when he was, like, pure honk because Robinson was his guy, and, like, even he couldn't defend that one. But so Harry Douglas, does he work for ESPN, or does he just kind of bounce around?
So I believe he just signed an official contract, but he would bounce around to different shows for a couple of years, but now I think he's officially signed to a contract.
So Harry Douglas I always thought when he came on shows and stuff, he was good, had good personality.
Yeah, he's a great person.
A
Good
nice
energy.
guy, went to a great college.
Mm-hmm. Go
so-
Cardinals.
So all those things. And I felt bad because we'd have Harry on the show, and Harry was interesting and good and, like, a good guest, but then, like, he sucked. So it was kind of like, Harry, you kind of stink. But I
Student
still
of the
liked
game,
him.
for sure.
Well, he was Mike Mularkey's kid. I mean, he just could not get that guy off the team. So, anywho, Harry Douglas apparently has a take that you found and you would like to share with the people.
Yes, I would like to share with the people because I love Harry. I thought this, and Julio Jones is a wonderful addition to the Titans, but I thought this was just outrageous because Harry Douglas was filling in for Stephen A on First Take today, and he listed his top 5 wide receivers in the NFL. So I heard that, and I was like, okay, I'm going to listen in. I'm going to see if A.J. Brown or Julio are listed in that list. First, at number 5, he lists Stephan Diggs. Okay, solid, cool. 4, Tyreek Hill. All right. DeAndre Hopkins at 3. Okay. When I heard Devontae Adams at 2, I thought, all right, Julio and AJ aren't on this list. So as I was listening to it, I was typing out, Harry Douglas doesn't name Julio or AJ in his top 5. Number 1 comes along, and it is Julio Jones,
Who happens to be
a former teammate of Harry Douglas in Atlanta.
and on a team that paid Harry
$8
a lot of
million
money to do
catch
nothing.
4 passes.
Yes.
So my instant thought was he is saying that because that's his friend and his ex-teammate. Because as wonderful as Julio Jones is, and I do think that he's going to make major contributions, fingers crossed, to the Titans offense this season, he's not the best wide receiver in the league. He's just not. He's top 5, you can make a case. Top 10, absolutely. I think AJ is in the conversation for top 10 as well. Number 1 is a stretch. Once upon a time, Julio Jones, yeah, for sure, number 1 in the league. He's not there anymore. He's not the 28-year-old Julio Jones that can catch for thousands of yards. I just don't buy it.
Harry Douglas made $7.1 million, and let's see how many catches he had as a Titan. Before I
52.
get it, 50. He had 52 catches as a Titan?
Yep, in 3 years.
When the hell did that happen?
Well, his first year he had 36, and then
Okay.
15, and then 1.
Okay, all right, okay. Let's talk about a steady decline there from Harry Douglas. So I'm not going to go and just call Harry Douglas a honk, though I'm not going to not call him that. This is the thing that bothers me. And I know I say this, and it must be a little ironic because Chris Sanders just said some crazy stuff about wide receivers on our show.
Right.
But sometimes I think they put these former players on TV, and they think these former players have a clue of what they're talking about. And I'm just convinced Harry Douglas has no clue what he's talking about.
I'm not going to say he doesn't have any
See,
clue what he's
I
talking
think
about.
with all things in life, and the news media and especially politics has really made this hard. But to me, there are certain things that you say that once you say them, you lose all credibility.
Mm-hmm.
I think one thing that we've done is we've stopped analyzing context. So you'll see like on Twitter or TikTok or Instagram or whatever, you'll see like something taken out of context. Like they'll take something that Dr. Fauci said in like April of 2020, which science has now proven was not an accurate hypothesis. And then they'll say, what happened then? The experts, they don't know. And like you'll get all your friends that feel that way just be so outraged, right?
Yes.
And like there's no context context to it. Like the people that are just so bright that are now like anti-FDA and they think it's like just a total pump their chest out to be like, the FDA says you're allowed to have high fructose corn syrup and that kills people. Well, yes, but you cannot pass that on to somebody else, and high fructose corn syrup will not kill you just by ingesting it.
Yeah, high fructose corn syrup is not contagious.
No, and it's not going to kill you.
Right.
Like, it's not going to,
If you only drink high fructose corn syrup for years, then yes, maybe that could be an issue.
well, if you eat 3,000 calories worth of broccoli every day, then you'll be.
That'll kill you.
Yes, like, that's a problem. So, anywho, sometimes when you say crazy things, to me, you lose all credibility. Like, and when you're like a Harry Douglas, for example, who's done a bunch of, like, borderline ESPN stuff, like ESPN, like, on Snapchat kind of stuff. Or,
Easy.
well, I know
Easy.
that was your job, but that's what I'm talking about. Like, I'm not talking, there's a difference between First Take
Yes.
and ESPN on Snapchat.
Sports Center on Snapchat.
Yes.
Yeah.
So when you do that, and then you get a shot at First Take, like, that's getting called up to the major leagues. And you say something crazy like Julio Jones is the best wide receiver in the NFL, and to me, I hear that, and I'm like, because I don't even think the fans here think that. Like, I don't think Titan fans think Julio Jones is the best wide receiver in the NFL. In fact, I think if we asked Titan fans, I think there'd be like a 50-50 split as to who the best receiver on the Titans is right now.
Exactly.
So when you say that he's better than DeAndre Hopkins, I don't even like DeAndre Hopkins. He called me a racist one time without ever having met me. And I am not a racist. And DeAndre
You're just
Hopkins,
a sweatshirtist.
What do you mean?
You're just an anti-sweatshirt.
Oh, yeah. You know, Deshaun Watson wearing an $800 hoodie. Like, can we not wear – never mind.
Whatever.
So, anywho. But, like, if you're going to tell me Julio Jones is better than DeAndre Hopkins, I'm not going to listen to you. Like, I'm not here – again, I've interviewed Harry Douglas a handful of times. We went to the same college.
Mm-hmm.
He seems like a great guy.
He's a great guy.
But you say something crazy like that. Like, I can't take you seriously. You brought up the fact that, you know, hey, is Harry Douglas just being a total homer? And it sounds kind of like that's the case because, again, Julio Jones and he are tight. Like, you can't do that. You cannot do this thing where it's like, all right, who are the best quarterbacks in the NFL? Let's talk to Caroline Fenton, who went to LSU. Who is the best quarterback in the NFL? I think it's Patrick Mahomes. Who's the second best quarterback in the NFL? Joe Burrow.
Yeah, that's a homer take.
Like, I'll go calm down now.
Now, who's my favorite quarterback in the NFL? That's a different story. But
Sure.
I'm not going to say he's the best.
But
or
he
even
didn't-
the top 15
He didn't
best.
rank his favorite wide receivers with Stephen A. Smith.
He might have.
And so, I mean, I don't think there's any way Julio Jones is the best wide receiver in the NFL at this point in his career.
No. Once upon a time, for sure.
And I'm not trying to dump on Julio because maybe Julio is going to be pretty good. But I don't. To me, this is ridiculous. I mean, this is honestly embarrassing to Harry Douglas. And I know people are going to get mad. Like, I know people are going to get mad at me when I say this. But, like, I hope somebody tells Harry Douglas, like, dude, you got to bring it down a notch. Like, you got to, if you're going to do this, you got to do it for real. Like, you've got to go on there and look. I mean, we know that Floyd covered for his buddies all the time. Remember, Ian, the Malcolm Butler thing where Bill Belichick wouldn't play Malcolm Butler in the Super Bowl, and then John Robinson and Mike Vrabel sign him? And Floyd's whole take was that Bill was definitely right to bench Malcolm Butler in the Super Bowl, and John and Mike were definitely right to sign Malcolm Butler.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm like, it can't be both. Like, somebody has to be wrong.
Pick a side.
Either Belichick has to be wrong for having benched Malcolm Butler, which I think he was, or John and Mike are wrong to sign Malcolm Butler.
Or at least
which I think
taking a
they were
gamble
right.
or something
Right.
like that.
You know, like at least, and it was like, nope, John and Mike are right. Bill was right. Everybody. No. But, like, you were never going to have that conversation with Floyd because you were never going to get anywhere with him on that. Harry Douglas is trying to be like the number one, you know, he's trying to go to ESPN and be, you know, like a guy.
Yeah.
Floyd wasn't trying to do that anymore. He was just trying to entertain you guys and somehow put up with me. And, I mean, I'm serious when I say this. That's a wild take and a wildly inaccurate take. And I do wonder if the people at ESPN see that and are like, dude, does anybody think Julio's the number one wide receiver in the NFL still?
No.
Ian, do you think he's the number one wide receiver in the NFL still?
The number one or
Yes.
a number one? No.
The number one.
No, I can't go there. Maybe if this was 4 years ago,
I was gonna say 2016.
I
I
could
think
get
you
there.
gotta-
Yeah.
gotta
For sure.
discuss it.
Mhm.
But it's not, and so I just don't want anybody to see that on TV and pump their chest and say yes. I look at it more as like, okay, can we really take Harry Douglas seriously? And now I'm voting no.
I think an appropriate place would be 5.
Okay, give me your 4.
I agree with the other 4. He had Stephan Diggs, DeAndre Hopkins, Devontae Adams, and Tyreek Hill.
I mean, look, some things are crazy. Like the Dallas Cowboys are paying
I
Amari
mean, you could
Cooper
throw
$20
DK
million.
in that conversation too.
Sure, you can throw a lot of guys in
Yeah.
that conversation. But like the Dallas Cowboys are paying Amari Cooper $20 million. I would never pay Amari Cooper $20 million. So maybe sometimes people just love their guys, but I see that. I think that's crazy. 615-737-1025. We'll get to your text because I see a lot of them on the Titans wide receivers. So we'll get to that coming up next. Plus we'll hit some headlines with Carolines. And I have a very, very important email that I do want to read at some point. We will read it, I would assume, some point this hour. Here on Stillman & Company. Go to thegamenashville.com and check out Nashville's best deals. Time to save cash fast with Nashville's best deals. Right now, you can purchase a $30 gift card to Central Barbecue for only $15. Central Barbecue serves up slow-smoked Memphis-style barbecue at 2 area locations, Hillsboro and Capitol View. Smoke is our sauce at Central Barbecue. Other deals include half-off $25 gift card for Joyland in East Nashville. Get the deals now while they last at thegamenashville.com.
you know what the plan is for Saturday? Will they tell you Friday? Will they tell you Saturday morning? When do you expect you'll know?
They haven't told me anything yet, so I don't know when it's going to happen.
That was Ryan Tannehill, and even if he did know, he's not going to tell you. That they've got a whole thing they don't. Remember, what was it last week or 2 weeks ago? They asked Todd Downing, will you be on the field or will you be in the booth? You'll just have to see Friday night.
Like, ooh.
What's the secret?
Cliffhanger.
Are you worried that the Atlanta Falcons will know? We got a bunch of texts on all these crazy wide receiver takes. The former Titans receivers are on one today. Chris Sanders says he'd cut Josh Reynolds, but he'd keep Des Fitzpatrick and he'd keep Mason Kinsey. And then Harry Douglas says Julio Jones is the best wide receiver in the NFL. Our text line is driven by WilsonCountyHyundai.com. What do we have in there, Caroline?
So people are really defending Harry Douglas. Alex texts into the text line and says there's plenty of active players that would still put Julio at number one. It's not as crazy of a take as y'all are making it out to be. I think it is. I think it is.
I think it's pretty crazy.
I think it's crazy. He responds and says, you're acting like saying the only active wide receiver in the top 20 career yards is still number one is an unacceptable take.
It is an unacceptable take.
Because he isn't what he was 3 or 4 years ago, and there are several other wide receivers who are putting up similar numbers
What active
to
running
his
back?
prime.
What active running back right now has the most rushing yards, you would assume, total in the NFL?
Probably Derrick Henry.
No. I mean, like, for their careers.
Careers?
Yeah.
Adrian Peterson?
Okay. And would you say that he's the number one running back in the NFL right now?
No.
Okay.
No.
Okay.
But I don't think Julio's career is as far removed from its glory days as Adrian Peterson's, but
No.
I get your point.
No, I would agree with you. But I would also say that, I mean, in the NFL, here's the thing about greatness. And this is what makes a guy like Michael Jordan so incredible. Michael Jordan was one of the better players in the NBA, one of the best players in the NBA, like 2 years into his career. Michael Jordan was the best player in the NBA and the best scorer in the NBA, like 6 years into his career. And then he was the best player for an entire decade until he retired, like the second time in 98. He was the best player in 1989. He was the best player in 1990. He was the best player in 91, 92, 93, 96, 97, 98. And yeah, they gave the MVP to Karl Malone in 97, to Charles Barkley in 93, but he was the best player in the NBA. That is so hard to do. That is so hard. In the NFL, Derrick Henry's the best running back in the league right now, for right now. There is a very strong, a more likely than not chance that Derrick Henry is not the best running back in the NFL at this time next year. Julio Jones in 2016 was the best wide receiver in the NFL. In 2017, you could argue that he was the best wide receiver in the NFL. But you can't argue what he's done compared to what DeAndre Hopkins has done over the last 3 years.
Devontae Adams.
Devontae Adams, you can add into that equation. You brought up Michael Thomas, who we would not argue right now is the best receiver in the NFL. Guy
2 years ago. Yeah.
But 2 years ago, he's the best receiver in the NFL.
Oh, 100%.
You cannot make a legitimate case that Julio Jones is the number one wide receiver in the NFL. It'd be like trying to make the case in basketball right now that Steph Curry is the best player in the game. You cannot make that argument right now. And I love Steph Curry, but you can't make that argument in basketball right now. What's next?
Ben texts in and says the context might be that he saw Julio work every day and still thinks he's the best because of what he witnessed with his own eyes.
But see, that's what makes you a homer.
Yes, and I understand that Harry has a different perspective of Julio than any of us will because we've never been in a locker room and practiced with Julio Jones. But that's not a fair thing to contribute when you're making this list because he wasn't in practice with Devontae Adams. He wasn't in practice with Stephan Diggs. So it's almost like it's a different playing field there, no pun intended. So I don't think that's a legitimate reason to put Julio Jones at number one.
Well, I grew up a diehard Titan fan. I mean, first game, I went to one game when they were the Oilers at Vanderbilt, and I absolutely hated it. The stadium stunk. The team we didn't think was any good. Then I just wasn't into. They lost to Ryan Leaf and the Chargers. I go to the first game at Nissan Stadium. It was in the Adelphia Coliseum. They beat the Bengals on a last-second field goal. Terrible Bengals team. They beat them on a last-second field goal. They play the expansion Browns week 2, smoke them, and now I'm in love, and they go to the Super Bowl. And the reason I say that is because I loved Eddie George. By the way, it is my best friend, Aaron Eskin. He's a doctor at St. Thomas. He turns 32 today. He is
Happy
my
birthday, Aaron.
best friend, like from the first day of preschool to now. And for my 10th birthday, his mom got me the first football jersey I ever owned, an Eddie George jersey.
That's cool.
So I love the Titans, and I love Eddie George. But I think if you were to say at their best, which running back would you rather have, I would take Derrick Henry over Eddie George. But every time I have that discussion with Chris Sanders, he always takes Eddie George. Now, Chris went to college with Eddie George. Chris played in the NFL with Eddie George. Chris is friends with Eddie George. And I say this because Chris's argument is always, you didn't see how Eddie worked. You didn't see how. I got a feeling Derrick works pretty hard too. Just a hunch.
Right.
And so that goes back to this point of, well, Harry Douglas saw what Julio does with his own eyes, so that's why he would put Julio there. But to your point, he's not seeing what all the other guys are doing. I highly doubt all the other guys are sitting in their living rooms eating McDonald's watching TV. And if they are and they're that good, then kudos to them.
And I'm sure there are a lot of guys on practice squads that work pretty darn hard.
Sure.
But I'm not going to put them at number one at their position group just because they work really hard. Every guy out there works really hard. So I just can't really get on board with that. But the Canadian Titan texts in and says, wasn't Julio Jones on pace for a monster season before injury last year? Why exactly is it that it's such a crazy take that he's the best wide receiver?
Because he's not the best wide receiver?
Because he's not. And I understand, Julio Jones, his stats before he got injured last year were great. But there was injury. And there are other wide receivers who put up just as good, if not better, numbers and didn't get injured.
Well, and we are down on Michael Thomas.
Right. He had an injury, and he had a monster season.
And we're down on Michael Thomas.
Right. I'm not going to put him in the mix.
Hurt.
Right.
So, and I like Julio, but, I think all these people that are sitting here saying that, defending Harry Douglas for saying that Julio Jones is the best wide receiver in the NFL, if we were to ask them who's the better wide receiver, A.J. Brown or Julio Jones, I think we'd get mixed answers. Mm-hmm. So before you text in to defend Harry Douglas, ask yourself this: who is the better wide receiver? Who are you expecting more out of this year? A.J. Brown or Julio Jones? Who are you expecting more out of this year?
Honestly, A.J.
Ian, who are you expecting more out of this year? A.J. Brown or Julio Jones?
Probably A.J.
I'm going A.J. too. So and look, maybe we're all wrong. Maybe Julio's going to, say, hey, look, A.J. is a good wide receiver, but I'm a Hall of Fame wide receiver.
Right.
But I'm rolling right here with what I know in A.J. Brown. 615-737-1025 is our phone number, 615-737-1025. We'll read the email next. I have an email that I'd like to read, and so I'm going to do that. That I received. It was a very, very nice email, and I'm going to read it because, well, the show's called Stillman and Company, and that's just what we're going to do. Tune into Nashville Sounds Baseball tonight on ESPN 94.9 as the Sounds continue their homestead at First Horizon Park against Gwinnett, a AAA affiliate of the Atlanta Braves. The pregame show with Jeff Him starts at 6:50. First pitch is 7:05. Sounds Baseball presented by 312 Pizza Company and Farm Bureau Health Plans. And we'll give away some Sounds tickets later today as well. It's ESPN 102.5 The Game, and we're streaming on the Game Nashville app. Stillman and Company, I shared yesterday the fact that this has not been easy for me the last 5 days, however long it's been. It still continues. I got my good moments. I got my bad moments. Ian, I'm sure it's been somewhat the same for you.
Mm-hmm.
With Floyd, Caroline, I mean, you saw me break down in tears about 20 minutes ago. So this is just kind of their good moments and their bad moments. And I got an email I want to read because I understand the idea that, Monday's show was kind of a memorial to Floyd, but that doesn't mean that it's over for me. And so when I read your emails, when I read what you say, it means a lot. And so I want to share this email. And I'm not going to tell you who wrote it because there's some personal stuff in here, and I don't want to throw anybody under the bus, and I didn't ask this guy if I could read this on the air, so I'm just going to read it on the air. Said Jared, first I want to let you know that I am thinking about you and pray that you find comfort during this time of great personal pain. I know Floyd isn't your dad, but when I lost my dad 5 years ago, I found the one thing that brought me the most comfort were stories that I didn't even know existed. So with that being said, I'd like to share my Floyd Reese story. And let me just say, that is the one thing that I enjoy the most is talking about Floyd. Today I was really down, and I was just on Twitter, and I saw the Outkick 360 was having John McClain on, and I know we talked to John McClain yesterday, but as soon as I saw that, boom, put it right on. Robbie and Rex Road, when they were talking about Floyd, boom, put it right on. In 1999, I was working in the video department of the Titans coaching staff. And I was basically a know-it-all 21-year-old college senior that thought he had hit the big time working for the Titans. After a couple days at Baptist Sports Park, I met Floyd Reese. He wasn't very friendly when I first met him, and I had no clue the stressors that being an NFL GM put on someone, so I initially took him for a jerk. Also, as a 21-year-old punk, punctuality was not something I took seriously. Maybe it just runs amongst all 21-year-olds. I don't know. Kidding. Well, one day I was supposed to cut some scouting tape for Floyd to watch, and I didn't have it for him when he asked. As you can imagine, it didn't go well. The next day, Floyd pulled me aside, and let's just say that I didn't make that mistake again. I mean, ever again. Like I'm 44, and every time I plan something to this day, I remember the talk Floyd and I had. Boy, Ian, I cannot imagine what that talk was like with Floyd. Holy crap.
That could have been a little spicy.
Whew. So flash forward to a couple games in the 99 season. Floyd could tell that I was very much improved and was early for everything. Little by little, I started getting some pretty cool things left at my desk from Floyd. Maybe a team-issued hoodie or issued hats or team jackets. Now, I was the lowest man on the totem pole at Baptist Sports Park, but Floyd always remembered me. One day, I was eating lunch in the team cafeteria, and Floyd came and ate lunch with me. We started talking, and he could tell I was upset. I had actually just found out, and then he puts in some personal information that I'm not going to include, but it was a tough time in somebody's life. It was a lot to handle, and he sat there and just listened to me. When we got up, he told me that one day I'll look back and realize I was upset for no reason, and that this will turn into a lifelong positive and not the negative it felt like at the time. Floyd would always ask me how things were going when he'd see me in the hallway, and he made me feel important. He didn't have to do that, but he did. He cared about me when I needed someone to care the most. Fast forward to the end of the season, the Super Bowl in Atlanta. Tickets were impossible to come by. There was no way I could get my hands on any. Well, the day after the team left for Atlanta to prepare for the game, there was an envelope on my desk with 2 tickets inside. Floyd called me and said, "Hey, Doug, take your dad to the Super Bowl on me. You deserve it. And God knows your dad needs a break. Game starts at 5:30. Don't be late." That Super Bowl was one of the greatest memories I have of my dad. And it was made possible because of Floyd and his generosity. I hope that this story helps just a little. And I honestly don't think I've shared it with more than 5 people. Sorry, Doug. I didn't say I was going to say the guy's name.
Yeah.
Okay. Sorry.
Well, surprise.
Sorry. Floyd Reese was a very good man, Jared, and I hope that stories like this bring you comfort. My very best. And I wanted to share that on the air because I read it today, and I immediately sent it to the Reese family. And I can't tell you the amount of articles I've read and the stories I've heard that I literally have been texting with Floyd's family all day, every day for the last 3 or 4 days. And it's all stories like that. They're all stories that I forgot. that like I remember just randomly, and I'm like, yeah, this one time Floyd thought it'd be a good idea to X, Y, then I did, and I just I would say that that's probably where I find the most comfort is in those stories. And the thing I told Katie today, who's Floyd's daughter-in-law, I said, you know what's crazy? And I was listening to John McClain, and John McClain, I felt like on our show yesterday, John McClain was I don't think he was getting choked up, but I think you could see that he was going there. I felt like he was getting a tiny little bit emotional today on Outkick 360. And the thing that I think I realized, or I have realized, is how many people in the last 5 days have told me, oh, man, I got this Floyd story, and Floyd did this, and I was so happy that I this. And those are the people that have like 1 or 2 Floyd stories. And people like me and Ian, we have 550 million of those. And I think about it, and I'm like, what kind of guy must you have been to have every single person want to come to the front and vouch with a story for you? Like, that's pretty impressive. Like, I'd like to think that I'm a nice guy, and I'd like to think that a lot of people have like a Jared Stillman story that they could say, you know, hey, this is proof that Jared's a good guy. And I have always thought about that, like in the way I've treated people at work. And I can't tell you the amount of people that I've worked with over the years who are like, oh, yeah, I have this friend who's a big fan, and they're always like, what's Jared like? What's Jared like? I'm like, I really like a pretty good guy. I'm sure you probably get some of that, like, you know, on a day-to-day basis.
Yeah. All good things, I promise.
You know, whatever. But I think it highlights the kind of guy he was. Like, take the great general manager aside. Take the guy that everybody fell in love with on the radio. Take that aside. I can't tell you how many guys are lifelong radio guys that suck at it, and how good Floyd was for not being a radio guy. But how many people just have a story about him? And every story is the same. It's, he made me feel like I mattered. That is the crux, the thesis of every Floyd Reese story. Is he either picked me up when I was down, or he made me feel like I was important. He made me feel like I mattered. And I think, and I'm speaking to myself just as much as anybody else when I say this, we could probably use a little bit more of that humility on a daily basis in the world today. Everybody's trying to show off on TikTok, and everybody's trying to show off, you know, hey, look at my house, and look at my car, and look at and everybody's trying to always show off. And I think about a guy like Floyd. Now, I say this. There's a lot of things about Floyd that I would not do. Like, I'm not saying he's perfect. I'm not saying that, you know, he's that way, whatever. But maybe just the fact that he would go out of his way to make other people feel important, even if they were little things that he did, that people would say, oh, yeah, I remember I met you guys at a sudden service out in Springfield, and you guys were so nice, and Floyd was so, and it's like, you don't know how many people over the last 5 years that we talked to during remotes. That's the whole reason we do remotes, is to go out and sit there, and then people come up to us at a sudden service in wherever, and during commercial breaks, we take pictures, and we talk, and of course, people want to talk to him more and take more pictures with him and all. That's why we do those remotes. And I'm not trying to marginalize this, but I can't tell you the amount of people we've talked to over the years at remotes or pregame shows or whatever that literally, and I don't mean this with any disdain or anything like, but it's literally one ear out the other. I mean, we're focused on doing our jobs. We're taking a 5-minute break. We chat with you. We go back to doing our jobs. And how every single person says, you know, I met Floyd Reese one time at an Academy Sports and Outdoors out in Cool Springs, and he was so nice, and he was so, and you hear those stories, and they're the same stories in 1983, and in 1999, and in 2016. What did Nick Saban say on the show the other day? Nick Saban said, when I got to the Oilers, I was a young coach. Nobody really wanted to talk to me. Nobody really wanted to show me anything. No one really wanted. Floyd took me under his wing. And when I hear these stories, I am comforted in a time that, again, I think is very tough, for a lot of people. It's very tough for me. But when I hear these stories, I am comforted by that. And I think it's the example of what we can be and what kind of the influence that we had. So I read that email. I liked that email. I wanted to share that email. And I feel bad because I didn't ask the guy if I could share the email, but I shared the email anyways. And I hope he had a lot of fun at the Super Bowl with his dad. He said it was one of the top 5 memories he had, and then he lost his dad 5 years ago. And think about that memory that he had with his dad because of Floyd Reese. 615-737-1025 is our phone number, 615-737-1025. Speaking of Floyd, John McClain had kind of a take of what it used to be like covering the NFL, and it's way different now. And are we concerned about the way the NFL treats the media? We'll discuss that coming up next. But first, you got it ready?
I'm ready.
Caroline wants to tell us about her friends at BetUS.
Hello, sports bettors. It's Caroline. I want to tell you about my favorite sports book, and that is BetUS. Football is back finally, and it's time to get in on the betting action. BetUS has been America's favorite sportsbook for over 25 years, and that is why I endorse BetUS. BetUS was around when Tennessee won their last national championship a long time ago. So with BetUS, you get a sportsbook with integrity and longevity, and you need to make sure that you're going to get paid. BetUS offers everything. They include live betting, MMA, golf, horses, esports, all kinds of crazy bets, anything you want. BetUS has got it. So call BetUS today, and they will walk you through setting up an account. 1-800-79-BET-US. That's 1-800-79-BET-US. Nobody in the industry gives bigger bonuses than BetUS. So join now, mention GAME, and you can get up to 200% in bonuses on your first deposit. That's huge. Nobody beats that. I bet at BetUS, and so should you. So go to BetUS.com and join today and put in promo code GAME, G-A-M-E, for 200% in bonuses on your first deposit. That's BetUS.com.
Stillman and Company is delivered by TriStar, moving ESPN 1025. The game breaking Titans news. Herald Landry has been placed on the COVID reserve list. Now, we don't know if that means a close contact, if that means a positive test. We don't know what that means. So I have some news on the Herald Landry front. So apparently, according on Herald Landry, this is what I've been told by a source. Herald Landry was vaccinated. Herald Landry is positive with COVID. And apparently the Titans are going to have a few more positive tests come down the pipeline as well. So that is according to an NFL source, that Herald Landry's been placed on the COVID list and that he has been double vaccinated. It, like Mike Vrabel, was a breakthrough positive, and that there are going to be more coming from the Titans. So make of that what we will. What do we think about that?
Well, I bring it back to what I said earlier, in that if there is going to be one major COVID outbreak amongst this team, I'm glad that it's now. I wish that it never would happen, but I'm glad that it's now. The Titans are currently in a timeline where they can, if they're fully vaccinated, they'll be able to stay away, whatever incubation period it may be, whether it's 4 days, 10 days, whatever it may be. They're still in the clear for week 1. I just hope that they can, if there are more cases that emerge, you said it's probably likely, get it in, get it out, and then figure it out from there.
Well, see, this is my thing, too. This is why you're vaccinated.
Right.
Because
it could be 4 days.
It could be one of those things where if you're positive, you know, and I'll say this, Vrabel said yesterday that when he tested positive, they immediately decided they were going to go rapid test everybody, and they were going to figure out who's got COVID, who doesn't have COVID right away. And just like with Vrabel, they're going to probably start that antibody treatment on them, you know, right away. And as we've been told, if you're vaccinated, the likelihood that you have serious COVID symptoms is significantly less than if you're not. And to that point, I mean, I had COVID, and I would never have been ready to play in an NFL game. But I was actually...
I'm not ready to play an NFL game fully healthy.
But I would say that for my physical fitness level, before I had COVID, I was rocking and rolling. I mean, I was, you know, and it just... Now, I wasn't vaccinated or anything. So I was shot down.
Do you think Chris Sanders would have taken you over Josh Reynolds?
Yes.
Probably.
Yeah. But I was just shot down. And it probably, you know, if you're not vaccinated, you're probably looking at 2 weeks to be able to come back and even put the helmet and the pads on, much less play in a game.
Right.
Well, you still have the 2 weeks, but if you're vaccinated and the symptoms are less, my guess is you probably would be able to play and be not 100%, but be yourself going forward.
Right. So do we know if he's experiencing symptoms, did they say, or not?
I do not know.
Okay. I mean, so many questions moving forward, but him being fully vaccinated does ease my concerns about it.
So, again, if you're just joining us, the NFL will not state whether or not you are positive with COVID or you are just a close contact to somebody with COVID. Herald Landry has been placed on the COVID list. I have been told from a source that Herald Landry was double vaccinated, fully vaccinated, and that this is a breakthrough positive, and that we need to be on the lookout for perhaps, I'm not reporting there are more positives coming with the Titans. I'm just being told that there's a chance that we need to be on the lookout that there are more positives coming from the Titans, not just Vrabel and now not just Herald.
So the Titans also have claimed an offensive lineman from the Jags off of waivers. Do you think that could potentially be a sign moving forward that it is an offensive lineman to be coming forward, that they're placed in the COVID-19 list? Do you think it's at any way a relationship?
No, because they've been down on numbers. They've been down on numbers with that the whole time.
Uh-huh.
And so that doesn't surprise me that they claim an offensive lineman. I think that with the 90 guys, or 85 guys they have now, they would pare it down to 53, place however many on the COVID list to get themselves 53 guys to play week 1 against Arizona,
Right.
and then start picking and choosing after that. So I don't think that even if it were, unless you had an outbreak in the quarterback room,
Mm-hmm.
I don't think that you would see the Titans go out and sign a specific position at this point.
Right.
It'd be different if it was in the season.
Right.
But I think we all had to probably know that it wasn't just going to be Vrabel.
Yes, especially hearing that Ryan Suckup not only tested positive, but there were Titans players, not just a Ryan Suckup, Mike Vrabel dinner. There were Titans players that went to dinner with him. You have to assume that there was going to be some sort of outbreak.
So, again, the Titans have placed Herald Landry on the reserve COVID list. I have reached out to the Titans, and I have asked if there are more COVID positives to come down the pipeline, because I was told keep an eye on more positives coming out surrounding the Titans. So I think we probably need to keep our eyes on that. How worried are we? I think that's probably the question that I would say right now. Let's use this as, let's say this is accurate. And again, this is just what I'm hearing from a source.
Mm-hmm.
Landry, double vaxxed, positive. And let me say again, double vaxxed and positive is not a bad thing. Like, I feel like I need to tell everybody that being double vaccinated and being positive, I mean, Mike Vrabel said that he had almost no symptoms. He had a scratchy throat and an earache, got tested positive, and like 2 days later felt 100% fine.
Right.
And I don't know what Herald Landry's symptoms are like. I don't know Herald Landry. I don't know Herald Landry's people. I don't know, whatever. So I don't know. But double vaxxed, positive, and that we got to keep an eye out for what's coming down the pipe as far as positive with these breakthrough infections on the Titans. How worried should we be? How worried are we?
Right now, I'm not incredibly worried. We're far enough away from week 1, and it seems like the Titans have a pretty high percentage of vaccinations on the team that if it is an outbreak, then it seems like it could be their time away from the team could be at a minimum. And maybe the outbreak is stopped a little bit more than it would have been maybe in the 2020 season pre-vaccinations. So at this point, I'm not incredibly worried. On a scale from 1 to 10, I would say I'm at like a 4 on the worry scale. But that is subject to change if this becomes a team-wide thing, that it's just kind of a domino effect, which it seems like it could possibly be. And once we get closer and closer to week 1, I think maybe my worry level could go up. But right now, I don't think I am worried, and I don't think anyone should be incredibly worried, but subject to change.
Ian, how worried are you?
Well, I think we're all a little bit worried first and foremost, right? First and foremost is just like the health of all the players, and hopefully everything goes okay. That most are vaccinated is a good thing. Hopefully that will help. But, I think it's just going to go more towards the NFL, and they're just going to have to tweak a lot of these COVID policies that they had to get these guys vaccinated. And they might have laxed some of the protocols, maybe in an attempt to get some of these guys more vaccinated, as far as the masks and the meetings and all that kind of stuff. I mean, just in general, I think, some of that mask stuff and some of the social distancing is just going to have to ramp back up, sadly. I think they're going to have to tweak some of the protocols. I think they're going to have to get into a more of a restricted kind of thing, which is kind of a bummer considering, they wanted everybody, hopefully they don't have to go back on some of their word they are and some of these deals that they had made to help get some of the PA vaccinated. But I feel like they're going to have to ramp up some of that stuff again, back to masks on the planes, which I guess you had to do anyways because that's a federal thing. But, the meeting rooms, space things, try and do more stuff in the bubble, try and be outside more of the masks inside of the meeting rooms. Sadly, I think that's kind of where the NFL might be headed as far as new protocols.
So once again, according now to multiple sources, Herald Landry double vaxxed is a positive. But again, I mean, I'll say this. I think sometimes people, when I tested positive for COVID, I put it out on Twitter that I was positive for COVID because I didn't want people to think that I was, trying to hide something or felt bad about it, because it's happening to a lot of people. But I do think that we should stay and that Herald Landry was vaccinated. and that I think is a good thing. And this goes back to the Titans and how John Robinson was happy with their vaccination rate when he said at the start of training camp that they were about 90% and they were getting more guys vaccinated. The head coach is positive. Now one of the starting outside linebackers is positive. And Teresa Walker put out there that now it's 5 total on the COVID list between Nick DeZubnar, Jeremy McNichols, Antoine, let me make sure I get his name right. Nick DeZubnar, Herald Landry, Mike Vrabel. I don't know if Vrabel counts, but
Number one on the coaching chart.
Anthony Rush, and that's what you have right now. So 5 if you count Vrabel. But again, Herald Landry placed on the COVID list, and I was told that he was vaccinated completely, but is a positive. This is not a close contact as far as Herald Landry's concerned, which is probably not surprising because you figured it wouldn't just be Vrabel. 615-737-1025. We'll get some more reaction on that. 615-737-1025. Stillman and Company. We're live from the wholesaling studio, powered by RumbleOn.com, right here on ESPN 1025 The Game. Let me tell all the fine folks out there, because I'm in a good mood, let's give away some Sounds tickets later this hour. Hang with us Friday for the Game birthday party as we celebrate our 10-year anniversary. Our presents are going to be to you, the listeners, as we'll have hourly ticket giveaways starting at 6 a.m., including your chance to win tickets for the Predators opening night and the Rolling Stones on October 9th, and much more. You can also join us at Neighbors in Germantown from 10 to 6, where you can sign up to win prizes on Preds Pride Day. Stillman and Company, we're live from the wholesaling studio, powered by RumbleOn.com. It's ESPN 1025 The Game.
Mike, to be clear, it sounded like you haven't had a negative yet, and I wanted to check on your coaching staff as well. Is anybody quarantined out of that group?
I have not had any. I have not had a negative test, so we'll wait to see. And then as far as the quarantine goes, we'll list those as required by the NFL.
I'll say this. I'm glad I'm doing my social distancing away from the Titans because I wasn't at practice. I haven't been around the Titans since Thursday of last week. Now, I got tested on Monday, so I didn't cover the game on Saturday.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't go into the facility on Sunday. I don't think we could. I think it was switched to Zoom because Rabel tested positive.
Right.
I went Monday, got tested. That's it. And then didn't go to practice on Monday, Tuesday, or today. So personally, as far as the little mini outbreak perhaps the Titans could be having, I feel okay. Knock on wood. I am now going through the responses, the NFL treatment response for COVID, but it's a lot of stuff. It's a lot of legalese NFL type stuff. What we do know is Herald Landry is positive. We have been told by multiple sources Herald Landry is positive, was a double vaxxed positive. So just like Mike Vrabel, it's a breakthrough positive. Now, you won't know this unless you talk to Herald. And you're not going to talk to Herald because players on the COVID list don't talk. But I do wonder if he was coming down with symptoms and got tested when everybody else got tested and was positive, or if the Titans have ramped up their testing efforts and he was a positive, and because he's been vaccinated, doesn't really feel many of the symptoms. I don't know. But Landry's a positive. And another thing, that he joins Anthony Rush, Jeremy McNichols, and Nick DeZubnar on the team's COVID list. And another source tells me that, quote, sounds like the Titans have a little bit of an outbreak because a few more guys had positive tests too. But that could be referring to DeZubnar and McNichols and Rush.
Right.
And not more guys to come down the pipeline after Landry.
I don't know. Honestly, I have no idea. I think with Mike Vrabel testing positive, I kind of expected this, hoped for the best, but expected this to kind of happen. I think moving forward, it's all about how the Titans deal with it, and it's all about I think this also is a big testament, at least for the players, to get vaccinated, because the shorter amount of time that you can be away from your team, away from practice, especially when it's getting to crunch time, I think the better you're off.
Well, plus you're going to be a close positive or a close contact with any. If you're not vaccinated, you're going to be a close contact with somebody at some point, and that knocks you out for 5 days. And I know right now knocking you out for 5 days for Cam Newton's not that big of a deal, or knocking you out for 5 days, Cole Beasley, isn't that big of a deal. But it is a big deal if you get close contacted on a Thursday before you have a big game against Kansas City on Sunday, because then you're not going to play.
Right.
And I do think the NFL probably should look at their protocols, because they did this operating under the guise that being vaccinated would pretty much keep you from getting the virus. We learned that that's not the case with the new Delta variant. So that is something that we probably have to keep in mind going forward, that the league probably has to look at this. But at the same time, I think it's going to be very random. It's just like I go get tested, every 2 weeks. If you're a media member who covers the Titans in the 2M category where you can ask questions, you have to go get tested every 2 weeks. So you literally just drive your car right in, guy comes up to you, just, swap, see ya. And it's not like those COVID tests I had to get last year where it was like
your
up
brain?
the brain stem. Yeah, no, it wasn't any of those. So it was just round the nose, boom, here you go. I've had 3 of those now, and they only call you if you test positive. So I obviously been negative all 3 times. But the reason that I say this, the reason I bring this up with you guys, is because I very easily could test positive and have no idea. And so I can't hold it against a player who tests positive to be mad if they got vaccinated and did what they were supposed to do. And the vaccine against the Delta variant is not as effective. Now, it's effective in terms of keeping you out of the hospital and keeping you from dying, but it is not as effective as keeping you from getting it or spreading it as the original variants were concerned.
We have some texts on this.
Let's do it. 615-737-1025. Phone lines driven by WilsonCountyHyundai.com.
One texter texts in and says, I would love to hear your thoughts on fully vaccinated people passing to each other in Nissan. So I know Tennessee Vols have already said that they are not going to require proof of vaccination or a negative test. I don't know what the Titans are going to do. If they came out with something and said what they expect to do, then I missed it. But this is my personal thought on it, is that if a fully vaccinated person does test positive and does pass it to somebody else in Nissan Stadium who is also vaccinated, think of it like a flu shot. Sometimes you get the flu shot and you also get the flu. And what do you do when you get the flu? You stay inside, you rest until you feel totally healthy. That's exactly what the vaccine does, is that it allows you to, first of all, it will keep you out of the hospital and it'll keep your symptoms at a minimum. So if there is an outbreak in Nissan Stadium, knock on wood, I hope that doesn't happen. But in the world that we're living in currently, it looks like that could probably be a plausible scenario. If you get it and you pass it to a vaccinated person, then that person most likely, hopefully, will be okay. That's exactly the point of the vaccine. So if you feel comfortable enough going out in public and doing things, I will be at Titans games, and if I do test positive for COVID, then I will quarantine, and I will do exactly what I do if I had the flu. And I think that's the same approach that everyone else should take. If you don't feel comfortable going to a Titans game, then you don't have to go to a Titans game. That's totally fine. That's your choice. But when two vaccinated people are involved and the symptoms are at a minimum, it's when you're unvaccinated, that's when the symptoms start to get so much worse. So that's my personal take on it.
So I guess I'm a little torn, because I'm not a doctor. So the idea of me telling people what to do.
I'm not going to tell people what to do.
Or say what the policy should be or anything like that. I mean, personally, and I said this yesterday, I like the LSU policy. Be vaccinated or have proof of a negative test. And if you don't have that, you can't come. Not don't come, you can't come. Now, I don't own the team, and if I own the team, I'd probably feel a little bit differently, but that's probably how I'd feel. I mean, all the data that I've seen, and I feel like everybody has their own data. I'm sure there's data out there. Somebody can just plug things into a spreadsheet, and someone can just plug something into a spreadsheet, screenshot it, put it on Twitter, and if it confirms somebody's belief, there's going to be a bunch of retweets, and people are going to share it. And I mean, the misinformation with all this is through the roof. But most of the vaccination, or most of the hospitalizations and almost all of the deaths are of unvaccinated people. It's like the CDC director said a couple of weeks ago, this is a pandemic now of the unvaccinated. I understand the idea of unvaccinated people saying, well, it's my body and I should be allowed to choose what I want to do with it. I understand that. But I also worry, you and I talked about this, about children's hospitals. And I worry about where that's headed. And so you have to wonder if sometimes decisions are made at the macro level to keep, children's hospitals from being overrun, which I know it's easy to sit there and say, well, it's my children. I should be able to do what I want to do. Well, maybe. But if your child lacerates their spleen and there's no beds in the children's hospital for your child who lacerated their spleen, then what do you do kind of thing? I'm sensitive to not knowing enough about the infrastructure of all of that. But just what my gut tells me, and every time that I say this, I use the disclaimer that this is if I were in charge. So if I was in charge and it was a dictatorship and I got to pick what we did, then we would do what I say, and I would just say you have to be vaccinated in order to go to a game. That's what I would say. And people would disagree with it, and I get it, but that's what I would do. Jason Fitz, ESPN Radio, going to join us next. Fitz was one of the first people to reach out to me the other day with the news of Floyd's passing, so we'll get his thoughts kind of on Floyd, plus his thoughts maybe on where the NFL is headed this year with all of these, all these new rules and everything that looks like, the media might be shut out, what Fitz has to say about that. We'll do that coming up next. TriStar Moving. Those are my official movers. I absolutely love those guys. When I moved in November, I used TriStar Moving, and they were fantastic. Like most people, I hated moving, but not anymore. Thanks to my friends at TriStar Moving. They made the entire process so simple, and there's a reason their motto is TriStar Movers with 5-star service. From the initial phone call to the final signature, moving was a breeze. They offer home protection, covering floors, banisters, railings, door jambs, and even the doors themselves. They're always upping the game when it comes to mover training, and they take care of your mattresses with protective bags and your TVs with protective boxes. Their owners, Garrett and Robert, are true Nashvillians, and they want to help their hometown any way they can. This company is the real deal and quickly on the rise, all due to the high standard they hold at TriStar Moving. If you're looking to move, give my friends at TriStar Moving a call, 615-640-1219, or visit their website, nashvillemoving.org/radio, where they'll give you 5% off your entire move. That's TriStar Moving, 615-640-1219, nashvillemoving.org/radio. Tell them Jared Stillman sent you. That's TriStar Moving, my official movers. Six 615-737-1025, Stillman and Company here on ESPN 1025 The Game. We are working on Jason Fitz, ESPN Radio, to join us on the program. We got text into our text line as well that we will get to coming up here. But again, we're monitoring the situation. Another positive test for the Titans. That's Herald Landry, outside linebacker. He is vaccinated, though, and so we'll continue on that front. Kind of crazy. Jared and the GM started on August 15th of 2016. And then, gosh, I want to say like 3 weeks later, Braden and Fitz started. And there was a whole process, and Fitz and I talked almost every day, you know, of getting Fitz into the lineup here at 1025. And we announced that show at the 5 o'clock hour on an edition of Jared of the GM. And I do know that if there was ever a mutual respect between two guys that I didn't totally understand why they liked each other so much, it was Floyd and Fitzy, and they absolutely adored each other. And Jason Fitz joins us now, brought to you by Blood Assurance. Give blood, give local, save lives. So, Fitzy, you were one of the first people that reached out to me on Saturday with the news. And so just anything you'd – oh, we just lost Fitz. We'll get Fitz back on. But Fitz was one of the first people that reached out. But, I mean, those two just freaking loved each other. And I don't know if it was like Fitz's attitude or if it was Fitz's energy or I'm not exactly sure. But those two, I definitely –
Energy is certainly something Fitz doesn't lack. Well,
I just feel like for all the people that come on the show on a regular basis, I feel like they should have the opportunity to say something about Floyd if they'd like to because, I mean, a lot of people – had a lot of things that they liked about Floyd, and we're all going to miss him a lot. What do we have in our text line, though, as we work to get Fitz back on the line?
One texter texts in and wants to know what happens whenever in the regular season, what is going to happen with fully vaccinated players testing positive. Because currently, as where it stands, if you're unvaccinated and you don't have enough players, you have to forfeit. But when you're vaccinated, you don't. But just kind of what you think that will look like moving forward.
Dude, I don't know what the NFL is going to do. I think this is one of those things where all these policies that the NFL has enacted are for the preseason and training camp. They are not for the regular season. And I think the NFL did this for themselves to allow them the ability of flexibility to that allowed them to be able to change once they got going and saw what was happening. And so now that they see what's happening, I think that there will be a policy that comes out before the start of the season that says this is the policy. And I don't know what that's going to be. If it's going to be the same 10 days with a positive test or if they're going to take it down with symptoms if you're vaccinated, that I don't know. Jason Fitz joins us. Let's try this number 2, brought to you by Blood Assurance. Give blood, give local, save lives. Fitz, I know you liked Floyd a lot, and I absolutely know that Floyd loved you. So if you'd like to say anything about Floyd, we'd love to hear it.
Yeah, I mean, the news hit me hard. I know it hit you hard too, brother, and I think it hit all of us hard because he was an amazing human being and had a huge impact on my life, even though we were only together at that studio for a little while, and I'll never forget about a month into doing the morning show, I saw Floyd in the halls one day, and he asked me how it was going, and I said, man, I don't know what the heck I'm doing, and I don't know if I'm any good at it. I'm just trying to have fun. And Floyd looked at me, and he's like, well, I can tell you this, I love listening to you, and I can't tell you don't know what you're doing.
That was really sweet. And
powerful.
Where is Fitz calling us from? Like a cave?
Maybe. Underground.
I think he's like
in a parking garage.
Might be like when I went to the ESPN studios in New York one time, and it was like zero signal.
Really?
Oh yeah, like zero signal.
Seaport?
No. So the ESPN radio studios.
Okay.
So that ABC building or whatever.
Yeah.
I mean, it was like, first of all, it was like Fort Knox getting in. And it was, they had to like give me a login to connect to the Wi-Fi. Like, it wasn't like, hey, here's the Wi-Fi, here's the password.
Yeah, no, you have to have like an email and a username.
And all kinds of crap.
Yeah.
In order to get to the Wi-Fi. And if you don't have the Wi-Fi, you can't use your phone inside that building. And so I remember, like, when my phone was, like, on and off with the Wi-Fi, of, like, not being able to text Ryan and Ian because I was connected, through their studios.
Right.
But Fitz joins us back on the program. Sorry about that, Fitz.
No, man, it's my phone. It's my phone. Like, we got hit by storms up here the other day, and none of the towers are working anymore. Phones just don't work in Connecticut, dang it. But Floyd, I can't say enough about Floyd. While I was there, Floyd the man since I left. Floyd had an incredible impact in my life. Very thankful to have gotten any opportunity to get the encouragement he gave me, and it really touched me, man. So my heart goes out for his family. My heart goes out for you. My heart goes out for everybody at 102.5 The Game. But, damn it, we were a better world because he was with us.
We really were. We really were. And I used to always laugh because You know, he was never one to, like, kind of toot his horn about how great of a football guy he was. But I think that working with him fits, and you did the pregame show with him for a year. I feel like working with him, it opened the eyes of everybody in the town to just how lucky we were to have him as our general manager for an extended period of time.
Yeah, and that needs to be such a remembered part of it. You know, we become such a world of Super Bowl or bust, championship or bust legacy, and it's easy to forget some of the teams that were incredible that didn't do that. And, you know, when you think about what he accomplished and really the difference in Nashville, the football town, when like it's just all.
Oh, those Connecticut storms. They're killing us. They're killing us.
I do hope everyone is safe up there. I heard that it was going to get pretty brutal.
Yeah, I don't know if it already came or went or.
I think it was supposed to hit pretty bad on Sunday. I texted one of my friends who lives up there. I said, "Are you okay? Are you safe?" She was like, "It's sunny outside." And it was supposed to hit really bad on Sunday. So hope everyone up there is safe. And also everyone to the west of us. Hope that everyone is safe.
Oh, my goodness. I mean, I couldn't. I got to be honest with you. With what, you know, we were all dealing with here on you know, the weekend, to then see that, I mean, I could not do that this past weekend. And I do think Fitz brings up a good point, and it is, you know, the idea of kind of that, like, championship or bust thing. Like, Floyd didn't win a Super Bowl here as general manager. Now, he got as close as anybody else did to winning a Super Bowl. But I do think that I have this theory because Ahmad Rashad did this. And, by the way, Ahmad Rashad and Floyd were good buddies. You would think that'd be pretty random because Ahmad's like a basketball guy.
Right.
But Ahmad played in the NFL. He played for the Vikings. Floyd was coach there. And Ahmad Rashad is doing this, like, sit-down series with all these great 90s basketball legends. And one of them was with Charles Barkley. And Charles Barkley said to Ahmad Rashad, he goes, Ahmad, I don't know when we got into this whole business of how many championships equals how good of a player you were or not.
Right.
And I'm not saying that it doesn't matter because I do think that, like, had the Titans won a Super Bowl or won 2 Super Bowls, which they had, I think they had 4 teams when he was general manager. And I can't tell you about the Oiler teams, but I think 99, 2000, 2002, and 2003 were all teams capable of winning the Super Bowl. He told me after 2003, they told me that in 2003, he told me, and this was one of those, I don't know if this was one of those 4 consumption things, but I'm going to share it because, you know, he can't get mad at me now. But that in 2003, they lost to the Patriots in Foxborough in the playoffs. And it was a hard-fought game in, like, minus 20-degree weather. And that Bill Belichick told him that that was the best team that they played. You know, so that whole Super Bowl run, they beat the Panthers in the Super Bowl, and Bill told Floyd that was the toughest game we played. And you wonder, okay, that team was probably good enough to win the Super Bowl. The team the year before that got to the AFC Championship game lost to the Raiders because John Simon fumbled the ball before halftime. That team was good enough to go to the Super Bowl. And I showed you in that Patriot game, I mean, that team won the Super Bowl. Drew Bennett drops a ball on 4th down that, I mean, is square in his hands. In 2000, we all know the ball off the pad into the arms of Ray Lewis for a touchdown. That team should have unequivocally won the Super Bowl, and then they were 1 yard short in 99. If they win 1 Super Bowl, I think you have a legitimate Hall of Fame argument as far as Floyd's concerned. If they win 2 Super Bowls, I think he probably gets in.
I think it's solidified.
And that's where you look back at it and you're like, man, that's where the Super Bowl matters. And I think, and I didn't know him at the time, but to think that Mario Manningham catch on the sidelines by Eli Manning or the Wes Welker drop, that kept Floyd from winning his, you know, would have been his last Super Bowl. Or I think, you know, the next season was his last season. They lost to the Broncos in the AFC Championship game. But that would have given him a shot in his second to last year to win a Super Bowl. And Wes Welker dropped the ball. And Mario Manningham made an incredible catch and a great throw by Eli. And it's just like, damn. You know, just,
You always got to think, like, and it's so torturing because you're never going to know the answer, but what would have been.
I just wish he had won 1 Super Bowl.
And
for him.
And you mentioned it earlier that Floyd said, you know, there are 3 teams that really legitimately could have won the Super Bowl. And I think that just shows how difficult it is to win a championship because you could be the best team in the league, whatever league you're talking about.
Oh, it's hard.
But you don't win the championship.
It's hard. I mean, think about this. Aaron Rodgers won Super Bowl. Russell Wilson won Super Bowl. Drew Brees won Super Bowl. Peyton Manning 2 Super Bowls.
Some of the best.
It's hard.
Yeah.
That's what, like, Brady 7, like, that's where you're like, holy crap.
That's a reason why he's an outlier.
Brett Favre won Super Bowl.
Mm-hmm.
And that's the salary cap era.
Dan
it was
Marino.
easier. No Super Bowl.
No Super Bowls.
It was easier back then when Troy Aikman and Joe Montana and all those guys didn't have a salary cap.
Mm-hmm.
So they pay everybody whatever they wanted to. But now you think about the great quarterbacks in the NFL. And it is Big Ben's got 2, Peyton's got 2, and everybody else has 1, and then Brady's got 7.
Right.
All right, we're going to try Fitz again when he's on the ESPN campus. We're going to try Fitz again. We'll do that coming up next. 615-737-1025 is our phone number. Stillman & Company, it's ESPN 1025 The Game, and we are streaming on the Game Nashville app. You know, there's very few people that I would do this for. But there was a storm in Connecticut. And I'm going to give Jason Fitz the benefit of the doubt, and we love him. And he loved Floyd, and Floyd loved him. And he now says he's in a better spot. on ESPN's Campus. Fitz is, of course, presented by Blood Assurance. Give blood, give local, save lives. All right, Fitzy, let's try it. Talk to me.
All right, we got you. I am standing like one leg up. I'm doing the chicken dance, whatever it takes to get
there
through
you
this,
go.
Stillman. We are here together.
There you go. So we were actually talking after you jumped off about the idea. Floyd never won the Super Bowl as a general manager, and it kills me that he didn't win one in New England. That the Mario Manningham pass from Eli Manning. We all thought, oh wow, that's a crazy pass. And that probably took the best shot Floyd had at the end of his career to win a Super Bowl from him. But I don't think that really knocks, in my opinion, the kind of guy he was in this city. What do you think of that?
Yeah, no, 1,000%. And you know what? The more that I've had the opportunity to work with guys that played in the game, the guys that were around the game so much, the more it continually hits me that as much as the Super Bowl is liked for all of us as fans, and it is for guys when they're in the game, as they get away from the game, they're capable of looking back at their individual accomplishments. And you're right, Floyd was never going to be the type to sit back and toot his own horn. But I think that we need to step away from it and say, okay, what was football in this city before Floyd, and what was football in this city after Floyd? And sometimes that's the longest impact you can possibly have. You talk to a lot of people from Indiana, and they'll tell you that Peyton Manning didn't just win championships. He changed Indiana into a football city, right? Like Indianapolis became a football city. You start thinking about what happened in Nashville and the trajectory that the Titans put on for the sports city of Nashville. I don't think you can put enough credit to Floyd, no matter how much credit you give him.
What do you make of John McClain was on yesterday, and John McClain was talking about the fact that back in the day, when he covered the Houston Oilers, how John McClain, he'd go into the offices and he'd talk to the general manager and he'd get chewed out by the general manager. And now, teams are so barred off from media. You don't get to know people like you got to know people in the past. Teams have their own media, and people sometimes maybe look like the media is beneath them, or they want to do national media and they don't care about local media. Or what do you make of kind of the dichotomy between Floyd's generation of how you treated the media and the way the NFL does it today?
I think there's a lack of understanding on the power that can come with a great relationship through all of that, right? Like, to me, one of the really special things about John, when you talk to John McClain, is that he knows everybody and everybody knows him. And so John can sit down and have a real conversation with somebody, around the Oilers at the time, the Titans, now many people for years around the Texans. Kind of a real conversation with you. And what it gives him isn't just stuff to say on air. It gives him context. And that's one of the hardest things to get is not just the story, but the story around the story so that it can be framed the right way. By opening up and really having media people trust front office people and vice versa, what you get is instead of just a report on who's been cut or a report on who didn't play out in the draft, who didn't work out, you get actual sort of context to the who's, the whys, and the hows, which is important for the storytelling and important for how we sort of look at certain eras. So I think that's what's being lost through all of it. It's become such a transactional world with the NFL particularly that everybody's just worried about who's going to rat out who and who's going to talk about what scoop and what story. And as it gets more and more closed off, I think we get less actual individuality and personality in the storytelling that comes with it. I think it's a real negative.
Why do you think the NFL's okay with that? I mean, this year they're only allowing inside the locker room only 50 team representatives, which will include team media. So after a Titans game, Jim Wyatt can go in the locker room, but Paul Kaharski or Joe Rexrode can't. What do you make of that?
Yeah, I think the NFL is always protecting itself to a certain degree, and teams are going to look at it and say, hey, we're trying to build a system where we control our own news cycle. But the unfortunate part about that is that everybody can look at that and say that's the right approach until they need more media exposure. And look, I mean, we all know the giant of the NFL, and they're untouchable, and their numbers are untouchable. But, you can also look at it and say, hey, maybe in the moment you don't see it, but in 5 years you'll look back and say, did that do the right thing for the fans in the area? Did it create the right connection in the way the stories are told? And I think the answer to that is no. So I think it's a short-sighted look by the NFL, and what the NFL is really doing by protecting their own is they're limiting the ability for you guys and really for everybody in the market to tell great Titans stories. And if I'm the Titans, the number one thing I want is great stories, because the more people are talking about the Titans, the more interest there is. The more interest there is, the more chatter there is. The more chatter, the more ticket sales, the more momentum. It's hard to ask the nation to pay attention to the Titans if they don't locally have the greatest momentum possible.
See, I think I look at it like either somebody's been burned with a bad experience or something and they don't like it, or everybody just wants to control the message, or they just don't care. And I never felt like Floyd looked at it like that he never looked at the media's role like that. And, I mean, let's be real. Like, Ian, I think you can back me up on this. Like, he kind of hated the media. Fair?
He did not really overly trust them on all their sources and inside info.
I mean, it's actually kind of amazing that he disliked the media at times as much as he did, and yet everybody in the media felt like he was the most accessible. Like, they're like, he's a great guy, you know, and like, if any time Vrabel or Saban or Belichick, or if they shot down what he thought was a dumb question, he laughed. Oh my God, he loved it. I remember one time at the Combine, John Robinson had a press conference, and he was just standing there, and he just walks over to the table, and he's laughing, and he's hitting the table, and I said, what's so funny? And he goes, somebody just asked him if there are any corners in the draft. And I'm like, and? He's like, well, of course there's corners in the draft. And he was like, he just thought it was a dumb question, but yet he was so accessible. I feel like general managers and coaches, either there's too much media nowadays, or they just don't feel the benefits of being accessible to the local guys that matter, and I think that's a humongous mistake.
Yeah, but Floyd also is smart enough to see the end game, right? Like, if you have a good relationship with the guys in the media, and even if you don't like them, if you understand how to play the game, then ultimately at the end of the day, you can get your message out, right? Like, you understand. I think the other thing with Floyd is that Floyd always understood inevitability and how to deal with it the best way. And, like, I'll go back to another story about radio. You know, I've been on radio for a short amount of time, and I remember talking to you and Floyd both about the same thing. And this was the peak of Marcus Mariota. And I think we were like a week into the show, and I said, well, we talked about Marcus every day. What are we going to do next week? And you laughed, and you and Floyd were getting ready for a show. You laughed at me, and you're like, you're going to talk about Marcus. And Floyd just laughed, and he's like, find a creative way to make sure that you get what you want out of it and have the right conversation. And I think that advice to radio is not lost on how Floyd handled media. Find a way to make sure you get what you need out of it, but give them what they need so that everybody wins in the process as much as possible. That's playing chess while the rest of us are playing checkers. Floyd understood that.
You know, I do remember one time where I woke up in the morning. I think you were still here. Were you here when the Titans signed Brandon Weeden and not Kaepernick to be the backup?
Yes, I was.
Okay, so I wake up in the morning and I look on my phone and Skip Bayless tweets out, Titans sign Weeden over Kaepernick. We start undisputed now. And I'm like, okay, I got to go watch this. So I turn it on, and Skip Bayless is sitting there, and Shannon Sharp talks for a little bit, and, you know, doesn't really say much. And then Skip Bayless goes, I think Kaepernick's better than Mariota. And I was like, what? I was like, okay. So 2 o'clock, we start off the show on how Skip Bayless said that Kaepernick is better than Mariota. And Floyd just shoots it down right away and goes, I don't care what Skip Bayless says. What do you think? I care what Skip Bayless thinks. And I laughed, and I laughed about it. And I'm thinking to myself, oh, my God, like I wanted to start the show on this topic, and we're 3 minutes into the first segment, and he's done. He's not taking what Skip said seriously. So I just go, you know, I think people think that, though. Like, I think there are people out there that think that Kaepernick is better than Mariota. And he goes, well, then those people don't know. And he starts going on this rant, and I just start seeing all the squares on the phone bank light up. And I'm like, phew. I was like, okay, all right, we got there some way, somehow. But I think those are the things that I would always remember about how he did something that a lot of seasoned radio guys can't do, which is I made him play the hits, and he could do it. Like, if we had a topic we wanted to drive for an entire show, he could do it. And a lot of radio guys are like, I just can't do 4 hours on the same thing. And he did it because he knew that was what gave us the best chance to win.
Yeah, you're 1,000% right. And, you know, and it just, again, is a reminder that Floyd always understood the entirety of the puzzle. Like, whatever it was that you were putting together, he saw every angle of it, every piece of it, and he knew how to put it together. And That's to me, and he did it all with the most unassuming nature you could possibly ask for in the process, with a level of humility very few people have, and that made him endearing and approachable while he was still beating everybody else at what they were doing. Like that, that's a rare combination for any human being to have.
Jason Fitz, ESPN Radio, brought to you by Blood Assurance. Give blood, give local, save lives. Fitzy, appreciate you. Appreciate your kind words for Floyd. And like I said, I know he really, really appreciated you.
Always appreciate your friendship, my friend. I know this is a hard time for everybody in Nashville, everybody at 102.5, but it just shows to how loved and amazing Floyd was and how much of an impact he will always have in our lives. So I appreciate you, brother.
Yep, thank you, Fitzy. Jason Fitz, ESPN Radio, joining us on the program. I do want to get to what John McClain said and get Caroline's thoughts on that, get my thoughts, Ian's thoughts as well. We'll do that coming up next. FanDuel Sportsbook is my official sportsbook app. You know, I absolutely love the FanDuel Sportsbook app, and I love the fact that we got a big fight. Former MMA champion Tyron Woodley enters the boxing ring this Sunday to take on YouTuber turned boxer Jake Paul. And FanDuel Sportsbook is giving new customers exclusive 30-1 odds on either fighter to win. I'm going to take the guy who actually does this for a living, so give me Woodley. That's right. Now is the perfect time to give FanDuel a shot because you can win $150 on a $5 bet. FanDuel is always hooking you up with exclusive odds boosts, great promotions, and so much more. That's why they're America's #1 sportsbook. So don't miss out on your chance to win $150 on a $5 bet for either fighter. Just download the FanDuel Sportsbook app and sign up with the promo code JGM to get in on all the action. That's promo code JGM. 21 and older and present in Tennessee. Odds boost available for new users only. Must wager on a designated boost market. $10 first deposit required. Max bonus $150. Risk-free bet. Refund issued as non-withdrawable site credit that expires in 7 days. Max refund $10. Restrictions apply. See full terms for both offers at FanDuel.com/sportsbook. Gambling problem? Call Tennessee Redline 1-800-889-9789. Stillman and Company is delivered by TriStar Moving, ESPN 1025 The Game. And great talk with Fitzy about Floyd. I wanted to make sure he could get his thoughts in there. And one thing that I found to be so funny, we had Jim Wyatt on Monday talking about Floyd and his relationship, and Paul Kaharski wrote a great piece at paulkaharski.com about his relationship with Floyd. And one thing that I do love, I'm going to have to call Floyd out on this, is that back in the day, Floyd used to do an hour, 5 o'clocks with George, Willie, and Darren back in the day, every 5 o'clock during the season. I remember listening to that as a kid. And Floyd would do 5 o'clock during the foot. And if they were on remote, Floyd would go wherever the remote was, and he'd sit down and he'd do an hour of radio. And people today are like, general managers don't do that anymore. An hour of radio? Well, I think Floyd was a very gracious person. And I love Floyd. He got paid to do that. Like, that's why he did it, because he got paid to do it.
Still very nice of him to do it.
So I don't know if he did it after they launched the Titans All Access show, but Mike Keith was talking about that. You know, I think it's on Fox 17 every weekend, the Titans All Access show, and the general manager does that show, and that's part of the general manager's contract. Like, so when you sign up to be general manager of the Tennessee Titans, it includes in there, you got to do X, Y, Z. And that, so everyone's like, Floyd was this great guy. Yes. But he got paid to do that. So anywho.
Well, nice of him to do the things that he's paid to do.
It was very nice of him to do those. But he did it with a smile. Everything he did with a smile. And I used to love the fact that deep down inside, even though he worked at ESPN and he worked here, he didn't like the media. Like, he didn't like the way the media covered the NFL at times. He didn't like takes. He didn't like that. Remember last year when the Titans had their COVID outbreak and Ian Rappaport and Adam Schefter and Jay Glazer and Tom Pelissero, and these guys are just hammering the Titans. And, Ian, do you remember him and Florio getting into it?
Yeah, we had Florio on.
Oh, they got into it. And, you know, I think we all should have thought about this at the time because the Titans ended up getting like a $250,000 fine. Florio was talking about Robinson and Vrabel getting suspended for the rest of the season. But the more I think back to that, the more I think that Robinson probably told Floyd what was what. Like, he probably talked to John Robb, and that's why he was so adamant that nobody did anything wrong, because J. Robb was so adamant that nobody did anything wrong or whatever, and he would have never told us that. But he didn't like the media. Like, I think he liked the individual people, like when he got to know them, but he didn't like the media, which I always found to be so funny because he was so great when it came to being in the media.
Mm-hmm.
And so for somebody who didn't like the media to have that relationship, and you compare it now with the way general managers kind of treat the media. John McClain, Houston Chronicle, was on our show yesterday, and John McClain basically said that they're not like it was back when he used to cover Floyd.
Back then, Jared, the situation was different with the media. You know, today most teams treat the media like gum on the bottom of your shoe, a necessary evil. Where back then, from the time I went to my first training camp in 1977 with Bum Phillips as coach and GM, through when the Oilers left, and even when they became the Titans, you could visit with them. I could go in Floyd's office. I could talk to him at practice on the sideline. I could call him on the phone, talk to Sally first, Floyd second. Floyd said, "Don't you tell McClain anything." And he was happy to do it. And if he got mad about something I wrote, he'd tell me, and then he'd get over it.
And nowadays, I don't think people operate like that. I mean, I have phone numbers of people that if I need to ask something, I can ask. But I don't think the relationships are there anymore. And it's not a COVID thing. Like when John McClain's telling you that he's talking about what it was like in the 80s and the 90s. You know, what changed, the 2000s, like these people are very detached. You know, and everybody's secretive about who they're talking to, and and I don't know if that's in the best interest of these NFL teams. Like, and I'm talking about in the interest of the teams, and I'm also talking about in the interest of the general managers and the coaches themselves. You know, I mean, I would say this. It's a lot easier when you don't have a relationship with somebody to really just be done with them and not care about them and things like that. Because there is a human element to this. I'd like to think I'm pretty honest, and I've ripped Mike Vrabel's rear end a lot. I really like Mike Vrabel. I think everybody thinks when I say I really like Mike Vrabel, but they say that they think that I pretend like all these things I say about him to say, I really like Mike Vrabel, but, and then I rip his ass. But I really like Mike Vrabel. I mean, you know where I developed like my real appreciation for Mike Vrabel? A couple of years ago, there was a Vanderbilt baseball game. Vanderbilt was playing Ohio State in a regional. And the guy who calls Ohio State baseball was the women's basketball play-by-play guy at Louisville when I was there. So we're friends. And he invited me to the game, and he invited me up into the booth, so I go up into the booth. The color analyst was an old Ohio State pitcher from the 90s whose college roommate happened to be Mike Vrabel. So Vrabel's up in the box, and so Vrabel and I know each other, and so, whatever. Well, we spent the whole day up there in the box together. And we're watching the games, and we're talking with the guys, and we're talking trash. And at one point, Matt Andrews, the play-by-play guy of Ohio State baseball, says to Vrabel, who's on the headset calling the baseball game, says to Vrabel, he goes, "Coach, I'm done being a Bengals fan because I just can't take it anymore. I'm done. I've moved on. So I'm going to become a Titans fan." And Vrabel goes, "Good. Tell Stillman, convert him." And then turned around with this big smile. And, we laughed or whatever. And then during, the middle innings, Vrabel says to the two guys calling the game, he goes, "You guys just sit up here and just criticize all the guys down there? It seems like a pretty nice gig." And I'm like, "It's not a bad gig, Coach." And he had a big smile. But, you get to know people on that level. And I would say this, I feel like if I'm out of line and Vrabel doesn't like something, I invite, the phone call to be like, "Hey, I don't like it." And I talked on the radio this week about how much it meant to me what Coach Vrabel said after Floyd's passing, and that was really important to me. And it makes it harder to want that guy to be fired. If I'm a general manager, it makes every general manager and every coach believes if I win, none of it matters. But when you're a total asshat like Ken Wisenhunt was when he was the coach, it's a lot easier to want that guy fired. So I wonder if the NFL is doing a disservice when they kind of, and it's not like a protocol thing, though the new rule that is out that for this year, only Jim Wyatt will be into the locker room and nobody else will. Ben Arthur at the Tennessean won't, Gentry Estes won't, Joe Rexrode won't, Paul Kaharski won't. They won't be in there. But Jim Wyatt will be, which I don't love. But I just wonder if kind of the mental shift, of, we don't need to be close with these people, or we don't need to get to know these people, or I wonder if that's a bad idea. I wonder if, and I'm not saying everybody's got to sing Kumbaya, and everybody's got to rip fireball shots, and everybody's got to be buddy-buddy, and everybody's got to be, but I do think that, I'll use Laviolette as the example. I didn't want the Predators to fire Laviolette. Mm-hmm. And I don't know, and I'm being honest with you, I don't know if it's because I really like Laviolette the guy, or if it's because I think Laviolette's a great coach. And I do think Laviolette's a great coach. But at a Preds Foundation event, Peter Laviolette and I connected at 11:30 at night for an hour at a bar inside the Lexus Lounge, and we connected. And from that moment on, even though I'd rip his rear end if I didn't like what he did, I always felt like there was a mutual respect between he and I. And I didn't think they should fire him when they fired him. And I'm just being honest with the audience that I don't know if I felt that way because I liked him or if I felt that way because I think he's a great coach. And I do think he's a great coach. So I do wonder, is the NFL going in the wrong direction? And with the macro level, I'm not saying Robinson treats people like that or Vrabel treats people like that, but is the NFL going in the wrong direction on a macro level with how people connect compared to as how John McClain says they used to connect?
See, I think it says something about the way that the landscape of the media has changed. I didn't cover football in the 80s.
Right.
So I don't know exactly what it was like.
And neither did I.
Right. But I mean, you look at the way that we not only produce media, but the way that we ingest media is completely different. You look on Twitter, you can listen to podcasts. The media outlets are completely different. And you also kind of look at that hot takey kind of culture that didn't exist 25 years ago. So, it gets clicks whenever you say something a little bit outrageous and you say something a little bit out of line. So that might be good for your MO, but whenever you're saying something completely ridiculous, of course that's going to damage relationships. And it's also the way, not just media, but the way that we communicate. So if you want a quote, an insight, something, you can just DM someone on Twitter or text them. And of course, that creates some sort of relationship, but it's not the same thing as sitting down with someone and speaking with them and getting their thoughts on something, or even having a phone call with someone and getting their thoughts on something. So the way that the landscape of media has changed definitely, I think, has built up some walls between the NFL side of things and the media side of things.
You think there's too many people? Like, you think that there's too much media that, like, we'll use Vrabel as an example.
Okay.
That, like, back in the day when John McClain was the lead writer for the Houston Chronicle, I mean, everything that he wrote was the official record. I mean, it was like the team journal, basically, for the Oilers. So obviously Floyd Reese has to know exactly what John McClain's writing.
Right.
And, like, John McClain told the story of, like, getting Cody Carlson's phone number. And I don't have Ryan Tannehill's phone number. And other than going up to Tannehill and being like, hey, what's your phone number? I have no idea how I'd get Tannehill's phone number. And honestly, I don't even really want Tannehill's phone number. But that's different than nowadays where, like, A to Z Sports has 7 different people who cover the Titans. And that it could be intimidating for a coach like Vrabel. Like, what's he supposed to get to know all of them?
It's tougher to make a relationship because, to your point, like, anyone can be a journalist. Anyone can have a podcast or start a blog or start a Twitter account. So, yeah, when you're dealing with more journalists and you're dealing with more media, it's harder to make those close relationships with every single one of them. And I also think it has something to do with the expansion of your audience. Because let's say back in the 80s, John McClain is writing for the Houston Chronicle. The people who read his articles are people in Houston or people passing through Houston that can pick up a paper. Now, all it takes is for me to tweet out a Vrabel quote or clip, and anyone on the planet can get a hold of it.
Sure, I asked Tom Brady if Ryan Tannehill was the MFer, and that was literally everywhere in 5 minutes.
Exactly. So now players and coaches really have to watch what they say because it's going to end up on First Take tomorrow, or it's going to end up trending on Twitter.
Or if you get beat, then everyone's going to point the finger at you and laugh and say, you said, no, I agree. Like when they were showing reruns of games during the COVID shutdowns and no sports, there was the Falcons-Broncos Super Bowl, and Madden and Summerall in the Fox booth were literally openly talking about how Elway and Shanahan hate Dan Reeves and Dan Reeves hates them. I'm like, I like that kind of stuff.
It's kind of fun.
Now it would be like, oh, yeah, Coach Reeves was a great coach for me, and I'm just so blessed to have played for Coach Reeves and to lost all those Super Bowls with Coach Reeves. And
yeah, I like Ryan Tannehill. He's beat me plenty of
of
times in my career.
Yeah. Like, no, tell me the truth. But you can't tell them the truth because I say tell you the truth, and then everyone's going to blow up with the truth, and I might be a guy who blows up with the truth.
Well, I mean, he called a guy an MFer, and we still talk about it. We've talked about it for months.
Brady was like, it was just fodder. I know. And then it was fodder for us to discuss the fodder. 615-737-1025 is our phone number, 615-737-1025. We're live from the wholesaling studio, powered by RumbleOn.com. Hiller Plumbing, Heating, Cooling, and Electrical. Guess what? Those guys are coming out to my house. That's right. They will be here on Friday. Got to get some work done on a water line, and there's nobody I trust to do that more than my friends at Hiller Plumbing, Heating, Cooling, and Electrical. They are fantastic, and that's why they got a 4.8 out of 5-star rating on over 15,000 online reviews. Hiller is celebrating grilling and chilling season. That's right. Get your free grilling must-haves when you make your home improvements, like a free Yeti Tundra cooler with the purchase of a new tankless water heater, a free Traegerwood pellet grill with the purchase of a new whole home generator, and a free Traegerwood pellet grill with the purchase of select new HVAC systems. My friends at Hiller back their work with the happy you'll be or the service is free guarantee. These deals are only happening in July, so customers should call ASAP. Hiller Plumbing, Heating, Cooling, and Electrical, proud supporter of the Preds and the Falls. We're live from the wholesaling studio, powered by RumbleOn.com. Stillman and Company, delivered by TriStar Moving. It's ESPN 102.5 The Game. And whenever somebody asks a question that he deems stupid, not you, not Bill, not me, not if Floyd thinks a question is stupid and the coach reacts to it kind of with that sense, he got such a kick out of that. We would see your press conferences. Mike Vrabel would do it. We'd see those, and we'd hold them back and wait to put it on to Floyd because he almost laughed so hard, Coach, that I thought he was going to have a heart attack. He was laughing so hard at that stuff. And I always loved the fact that the guy who, I don't want to say he kind of had a disdain for the media, but he always loved when the sports media got put down a little bit, that he then ended up in the media, and I think he understood that irony too, Coach.
Yeah, I think that's right. And, but I think that, if the times that I did things with Floyd when he was in the media, it's really good when you have somebody in the media that has perspective on the circumstance and the situation that you're in as a coach. And it's very comforting, for me to be involved with people like that because they have a different way of being able to bring out, interesting facts because they know what to ask. And I'm not saying that some people in the media don't know what to ask, but when you have somebody that has a background in what you're going through and what your circumstance is, I think it really is helpful, and I think it's really helpful to fans getting a lot of good information too. And I think Floyd was really good at that.
There you go. That was Coach Saban talking about Floyd and the media again. He had a great relationship with the media. I mean, everybody, like listening the last couple of days to all the shows, everybody had a story. I'm watching Outkick 360, and, obviously Paul covered the team, as a beat guy, columnist, and he has stories. Hutton was, I think, an intern or maybe, just starting out at Titans Radio. He had a story. Chad was producing or a part of the afternoon show at the time, and that Floyd would come, and he had a story. I mean, like, everybody had a Floyd story about Floyd the media. And you just wonder if the NFL still has, if those people today still have those kind of relationships. And, I'll say one thing. I think that, being around, like this year I've been around more often than I have been in the past. I think that probably helps aid in a relationship. But I think there's a lot of things that make it different than it is today. I think not only that, the league probably steers teams to wanting to prioritize the league-owned NFL network as kind of a way to get information out. So I think there's that too. But just taking your reaction, 615-737-1025, what do we have? Phone line driven by WilsonCountyHunter.com.
Mike from Nashville has a good one.
Okay.
You might have better relationships with teams if you quit saying the staff and players suck. Look in the mirror.
Do you think I'm the problem?
No, I don't think well, that goes back to, do we think that this is a problem? Or is it just different?
So I definitely think it's a problem. Like, I definitely think it hurts. Here's the thing I guess I struggle with, right? Like, and maybe this is like some of these people that can't put themselves in other people's shoes. It's like politicians that make decisions for other people when all these politicians are rich and went to Ivy League schools and, whatever. Like, a lot of people think I suck. Like, a lot of people think I should be fired. Like, a lot of people are very vocal about those things. Now, I don't think they actually believe them, but I think that they are very vocal. Like, I'll give you an example. Like, people all the time will say things like, I'll tweet out something they don't agree with. And they'll be like, how does this guy have a sports show in Nashville? It's beyond me. And I'm like, you know the answer. You don't want to say it.
Right.
But people listen to this show. Everybody knows people listen to this show. So to sit there and say, like, oh, my God, why would you? But I see it. It doesn't bother me. But, like, I see it, but I know it, and I know people feel that way, but it doesn't bother me. But because it doesn't bother me doesn't mean that it doesn't bother them. And, like, maybe I lack the empathy for those people that are like, hey, you said I suck. Like, why would I want to have a relationship with you if you think that I should be fired? I get it. But I just think it's a lot harder for me to want you fired if deep down inside I like you. And I'm not saying that I protect friends or anything like that. I think we're talking natural human element here.
And I think also, too, there needs to be a certain mutual understanding that I'm doing my job and you're doing your job. So if I'm a coach and I'm really incredibly threatened by a radio host saying that I should lose my job, then maybe you're the problem. Maybe you shouldn't be so upset about what other people say about you. Maybe you should use that as fuel for your fire to actually win games.
But
I get it. I understand that your ego will be bruised whenever somebody is saying that you should lose your job. There is a certain level to that. I understand that. So there is something to that.
But I will say this. I mean, I understand the fact that, I wouldn't have a relationship or someone wouldn't want to have a relationship with me when I'm like, they should be fired. I understand that. But I'm just saying that I think it makes it harder for the media to want to crap on you if people have those relationships with you.
And I also think it makes it a little bit easier to crap on someone if you are so involved with the team. If you're going to practices, going to games, you're at press conferences, you're asking questions at press conferences, then it does make it a little bit easier, I think, because you're involved with the team and you do know the ins and outs of the team and you feel like you have the right to say that. If you are that involved with the Titans, with the Predators, whatever team it may be, then I do think that you have a right to have that opinion.
Well, somebody said to me one time a couple years ago, they said, man, you are just dropping bombs in these press conferences. And I said, not really. I just feel like if you're going to say something, like if you're going to have an opinion on something, or if you have a question about something, you need to ask it. What good does it do to come to a press conference, not ask any questions, and get on the mic and be like, I don't know why Vrabel would do this. I mean, you got to ask Vrabel. That's all I believe in. And then he can say whatever he wants to say. And if he doesn't want to answer the question, he doesn't have to answer the question. But that's the way I kind of feel about it. Not that I'm not trying to play gotcha with Vrabel or Robinson or Poyle or any of those. It's like the Poyle thing, right? Like, I ask Poyle uncomfortable questions. It clearly bothers him. But I do that because I'm going to criticize you for it, so I might as well ask you and let you get your side of it out there so that you can say, okay, this is your rebuttal to how I feel. All I care about is what's in the best interest of the hockey club, and I'm sure that's how he feels too. We just differ in opinion as to how to get there. But I stand by this. Everybody was ready to can Laviolette, and I just thought it was a bad idea. Because I thought, hey, this guy was a good coach. Everybody was loving him in town 3 years ago, 2 years ago when he got you to the Cup final. And now you want to fire the guy? Like that quickly? Like you want to dump on the guy when we all were like, oh, he's a great coach. And now you want to fire him. And I'm like, that doesn't make any sense to me. But there is the element that I had a lot of respect for Peter Laviolette. And I believe that Peter Laviolette had a lot of respect for me. And so I don't know. I think it's fair to say. What else we got?
Canadian Titan texts in and says, I agree with Caroline. The media has changed, so it's only natural that the relationship between media and coaches have changed. But most importantly, the relationship between media and consumer has changed. I can interact with you all regularly, and I feel like I know you all, and I feel like, to some degree, you guys know me. So it goes both ways. And he has a point. It was Canadian Titan's birthday the other day, so I wished him a happy birthday. That's something that you can't do without social media or without digital, whatever you don't have. I call it face-to-face. I know it's not face-to-face, but let's just call it that kind of interaction with the consumer, with the listeners, with your audience. So whenever you're able to have that kind of close relationship, you learn what the people want. You learn what the people have questions about, and that can kind of guide whatever it is, whether it's a radio show, an article, a TV show, whatever it may be. So that, to his point, it could be viewed as a positive or a negative. I personally see it as an advantage.
I've always told people that the questions we ask in press conferences or the topics we discuss on the radio are not what I want to talk about. It's what you want to talk about. Mm-hmm. And that's why, going back to that Poyle press conference, I asked him about why would you protect Jeannot over Yarncroke? Because I don't know. Everybody was wondering why. And then the next question was like, so this 18-year-old prospect out in Sweden, what do we think about him and this goalie?
I don't know.
What's next?
Shane from Ashland City texts in and says, Sticks and Stones, if you spent millions on something I sell and tell me I suck, I could care less. If you said you were going to take that million elsewhere, I would care. I can say y'all suck, but still listen tomorrow. You can't please everyone.
Yeah, but I think this goes back to, what's most beneficial for the team. Mm-hmm. What is most beneficial for Mike Vrabel? And I'm not saying, what's most beneficial for the Titans, those two things may be not the same. I think it's like a Venn diagram. There are things that are good for Vrabel. There are things that are good for the Titans, and then there's things that are good for both of them. Now, they'll try to tell you that they only want to do things that are good for both of them, but I don't honestly believe that. But if you're Vrabel, every second that you're not coaching, I sometimes get the feeling like Vrabel thinks that talking to the media is a waste of his time. It's like, man, I could be coaching, or I could be watching film, or I could be, and without having covered Floyd, I got the feeling that Floyd never gave anybody that feeling that you were wasting his time. That when he had to do the hour on the radio on Fridays before the games, that he could have been watching film, that he could have been on a plane to go watch a college game, that he didn't make you, the audience, feel like he was wasting your time. And people are different. Floyd had a tolerance for that stuff. He worked with me every day, and I think a lot of people gave him a lot of credit for that. So he had a certain level of tolerance. I do remember, oh, my God, I can't believe this story hasn't come up over the last couple of days. Floyd was mad. Arvidsson was like a protective class for a while, like an endangered species, until he was no longer worth that to the fans. And then they kind of turned yeah, get rid of Arvidsson. We got to get rid of Arvidsson. But before it was like, Arvidsson is our guy, and we love Arvidsson, and screw you, Jared, and Arvidsson is the greatest thing. Oh, I love him. And, Ian, you know where I'm going with this?
Yes, I do.
Okay, so Arvidsson in the 2017 playoffs had 13 assists and 2 goals. And Arvidsson was a 30-goal scorer, and Floyd was basically like, I need Arvidsson to start scoring. And I was like, well, he's getting a lot of assists, and he's telling me, I don't care about assists. Goals. I need that puck in the back of the net. I need him scoring. And the phones just lit up. And so Ask the GM that day turned into Preds fans just bitching at Floyd about Arvidsson and this Arvidsson take. Well, Ask the GM for me was kind of like a little bit of a break.
Mm-hmm.
I'd set it up. I'd tell you all what the gift is. I'd give out the phone number. I'd watch the phone lines light up. I'd give out the sponsor name. And then I'd be like, Chuck is up next. Chuck, you're on with the GM, Floyd Reese. And then I just kind of tuned out. And I just kind of went off into Jared land. And maybe I was checking my phone, or maybe I was doing, whatever. I just kind of tuned out. And one of these, Ask the GM, it's Floyd versus the fans on Arvidsson, and somebody said something. I don't know what he said. Well, Floyd doesn't know how to work the phones. I work the phones. And so all of a sudden he wanted to hang up on a caller. So he just pressed a button, and all of a sudden you just hear this dial tone go off. Well, I'm staring off into space. So I turn over, and I go, did you just hang up on that caller? And he was like, yes, I did. And he was such a bad job of hanging up on the caller that I was like, wow, we've reached a whole nother level. We've reached another level. So he did get to that at some point. But he was very patient with people, and I just sometimes I don't feel like the general managers and coaches, I feel like they're in this society of if you're not looking at film right now, somebody else is and gaining an advantage on you. And so you need to not care about this. And then they approach it like, it's a waste of my time. I will say this. I do think Vrabel has gotten better. I do think Vrabel is more secure, or maybe he just missed everybody after a year.
This year in particular, I think.
Yeah, I think he missed everybody last year. I think he hated the Zoom thing, and I think he, likes seeing people but he is definitely having more fun with it. One of the days he wasn't scheduled to talk, and the coordinators were scheduled to talk, and Vrabel walks right by the podium right before he walked inside the facility, and he walked up like he was going to talk, and then stared at everybody, smiled, and then walked into the building. And I turned to somebody and I said, you know what? First person he sees in that building, he's going to be like, guess what I just did to them? And stuff like that is endearing. It is.
That's his personality.
It is. And Vrabel's a smart ass, and he knows it, and we know it, and whatever, but I like it. I'm fine with it. 615-737-1025. Joe Rexroad's got me all worked up. And so we'll get to that coming up next. Stillman and Company, we are delivered by TriStar Moving. It's ESPN 1025 The Game. Have we given away those Sounds tickets, Ian?
Nope, not yet.
Let's do it right now. Be caller 5, and you're going to be seeing the Sounds take on the Gwinnett Stripers, I believe, this Sunday at First Horizon Park, 615-737-1025 to get those pair of tickets for the Sounds and the Stripers on Sunday at First Horizon Park. Stillman and Company, we're delivered by TriStar Moving. It's ESPN 1025, The Game. Do you want to win a... Oh, wait a minute. Hold on. I feel like I'm missing something. Hold on. Wait. Here you go. Nashville SC and Atlanta United have a huge match in the Eastern Division Saturday afternoon in Hotlanta. Join us for a fun watch party at Boomba's Craft Pizza and Tap House in East Nashville. You can enjoy great beer specials on Heineken, plus you can have a chance to win tickets to the next Nashville SC home game. Mark your calendar to watch Nashville SC take on Atlanta United this Saturday afternoon at 2:30 at Boomba's Craft Pizza and Tap House at 1000 Russell Street in East Nashville. So Joe Rexroad is complaining about something that I find not worthy of complaining. Okay. When somebody says double vaxxed, what do you think that means, Ian?
Both shots.
Caroline.
Fully vaccinated, both shots.
Okay, so I tweeted out that the source had told me Herald Landry goes onto the COVID reserve list, so you don't know if it's a close contact or if he's got a positive test. I've told you that a source told me, well, multiple sources, that Herald Landry is, quote, this is my tweet, sources, Herald Landry is double vaxxed, is a positive COVID case, and there could be more positives on the way with the @Titans, end quote. To me, there is nothing confusing about that.
No.
Ian?
I mean, no, I don't think so. Not to me.
So Joe texted me, and he goes, what do you mean by double vaxxed? I'm like, I mean what everybody means by double vaxxed. I said he's had both shots. Joe goes, oh, that's confusing. He's just vaxxed then, especially now with the booster shots now. That, to me, means double vaxxed.
See, someone just commented on the stream and said, so he's vaccinated. He's not double vaxxed. I think, okay, you get one vaccination, and then you get two vaccinations.
Double vaxxed.
I guess
if you get your booster shot, you're triple vaxxed.
I guess it does take 2 to become fully vaccinated with certain shots.
So Joe says, quote, serious question, is double vaxxed accurate for someone who has had both shots, or is that just vaxxed?
Fully vaxxed.
I mean,
I think
to
would be
me-
the same way of saying that.
To me, double vaxxed means, as where we sit today, to me, double vaxxed means you've had both shots. So vaccinated, fully vaccinated, and double vaxxed is the same thing.
Yes.
Like, that's how I view it. That when you have had that shot, that second shot for 2 weeks, you are double vaxxed or you are fully vaccinated. It is the same thing.
I think that makes sense.
Okay, well, then I think Joe's chirping about something stupid.
Well, because why would you get 4 shots? Like, why would you get vaccinated, like fully vaccinated twice?
Like, I think Joe is just trying to pull at a thread right now. Like,
Yeah,
I think
Joe-
Joe knows when Joe saw that, Joe knew.
Well, Joe's
what
an
that
old newspaper scribe, so he likes to have these things, technicalities, all that kind of stuff figured out.
Don't take
Did we
up for
not-
him.
Do we not have enough hot takes today that this is what the hill that Joe's going to die on? Is the term double vaxxed?
Well, I've been low key on hot taken for a while, so now Joe, there's
Now
been a
Joe's
couple of
taking
days that
advantage
Joe
of
hasn't
it.
been able to pick on me. So now Joe's like, okay, I gave him 5 days to mourn the loss of his longtime partner. So now I'm gonna pick on him about something stupid. That's what it's got to be, right?
But I do have to say, I kind of appreciate this this COVID slang. Like I used to call quarantine the queue. Like back in the queue. It's fun. Like Shot Girl Summer.
No.
Yeah, it's fun.
I do remember one time I did a read for Fireball, and I talked about virtual happy hour. And so, like, when I would do reads, Floyd would never do a live read. So, like, you've already done 3 more live reads in your life than Floyd Reese ever did. I think he tried it once and was like, So he wasn't doing live reads. He would do, like, recorded commercials, for Mercedes-Benz, but he would not, whatever. And so I think it's known that old men, use the restroom quite often.
Yes.
And so he would use the restroom like 3-4 times a show, Ian?
I guess it varied from day to day.
But I mean, it was so one time during COVID, like the real shutdowns, like I was doing a Fireball read and I was talking about Fireball and virtual happy hours. And he turned around and looked at me with this look like, what the hell is a virtual happy hour? So as soon as I'm done, I'm almost laughing through the end of the read. So as soon as the read's over, he goes, well, what is a virtual happy hour? And I said, people can't get together, so they get on Zoom on their computers and they pour drinks and they, toast. He goes, so you're telling me that Sally and I are going to get in front of our computers with a glass of Chardonnay and tip it to Nick and Terry for their Chardonnays? I said, or White Claws. And he just goes, ha, ha! You people, just ate him alive. Just got him. And so that was when I then decided that I thought virtual happy hours were stupid. That was when I was like, no virtual happy hours for me.
I think I did one with some of my friends from college, and we were all like, this is weird. This is uncomfortable. This is just a Zoom meeting. This is the same 9 a.m. meeting that I had with my manager this morning. I don't like it.
Yeah, I was never into the virtual happy hours and the things like that.
Yeah. I understand that it was a nice way to get some sort of communication with the outside world. Just didn't do it.
There was this one time, though, that this girl, I was single at the time.
Uh-huh.
And this girl from college and I, we were, talking a lot or whatever. And so, one night, I think it was, Cinco de Mayo of 2020. And we decided, to each order Mexican food. And then, we didn't, think we were going to do this. I think she ordered Mexican food. And I was like, oh, Mexican food. So I ordered Mexican food. We were on FaceTime. And so then, she pulled
Kind of
out
like a date.
Yeah. I pull out a bottle of tequila. She's got it. I was like, all right, dude, we should take a tequila shot. So, we took, a couple tequila shots on, Cinco de Mayo. And we each had Mexican food. And we weren't even in the same state. And the next night, I fell asleep like that. And the next morning I woke up and I was like, dude, I felt like I went on a date last night. and it cost me like $13.
It's pretty nice.
It's much nicer than what it costs to go on a real date. Caroline's is coming up next. 615-737-1025 is our phone number. FanDuel Sportsbook is my official sportsbook app. You know I absolutely love them. Use the promo code JGM in order to get in on the FanDuel Sportsbook app. One of the things I love about betting on FanDuel Sportsbook is you get more than one shot to swing for the fences. Right now, new and existing users can get up to $25 back in site credit each day. Just place a minimum 5-leg baseball parlay, and if it falls one leg short, you get up to $25 back with the insurance. Boy, the Braves let me down last night. Let me down. There's a reason that FanDuel Sportsbook is America's #1 sportsbook app. It's easy to use. They got odds on everything, all different bet markets, unique fun bet types, and much, much more. In addition to the parlay insurance, if you haven't tried FanDuel Sportsbook yet, new users can place your first bet risk-free. That's right. New users get up to $1,000 back in site credit if your first bet doesn't win. Download the FanDuel Sportsbook app. Use the promo code JGM. Again, promo code JGM. 21 and older and present in Tennessee. First online real money wager only for risk-free bet. Refund issues non-withdrawable site credit expires in 7 days. Max refund $25 per game. Restrictions apply. See sportsbook.fanduel.com for details. Gambling problem? Call Tennessee Redline 1-800-889-9789. Stillman and Company, time for Caroline's. By the way, somebody tweeted me. Again, all I'm saying is I've talked to multiple sources that Herald Landry is fully vaccinated or double vaxxed, which I think is fine.
I think that's fine. You got your 2 of your shots.
Yes. That Herald Landry is double vaxxed and is a positive COVID case, and that there could be more positives on the way with the Titans. And somebody said, anti-vaxxer thinks it's worth mentioning someone whose vax has COVID, disregarding the fact that it doesn't decrease your likelihood of contracting COVID is greater than being knowledgeable. I said,
whoa.
I am remarkably pro-vaccine. Like, if you've listened to the radio station or seen any of my tweets, I am incredibly pro-vaccine.
Right.
And I'm not even, the people that are like, I'm pro-vaccine, I'm just pro not getting, like, I'm pro-vaccine and I'm pro making you get it. Like, I'm not pro the government making you get it, but I'm pro, everybody else making you get it.
Right.
And the person said, the person said, oh, sorry, I thought you were Clay Travis. I don't think anybody thinks that. Hot take. Time for
But that you were Clay Travis?
That's what they said.
Interesting.
Time for Carolines.
Get in on the action. Put the money on the mahogany. What's on tap on the sports books? It's time to break it all down with Carolines. Here on Stillman and Company.
On ESPN.
102.5 The Game and the Game Nashville app.
Carolines is brought to you by BetUS, America's favorite sportsbook for over 25 years. Sign up at BetUS.com and mention GAME, G-A-M-E, to get 200% in bonuses on your first deposit. So first up, we've got the Rays and the Phillies tonight. Give me the Rays on the money line, -145. They're throwing out lefty Ryan Yarbrough on the mound. He is 7-4 with a 4.57 ERA and 18 starts. But so he was on the COVID-19 list, and he's made one start since then. He only allowed one hit and 5 scoreless innings against the Orioles on August 18th, which that's also the Orioles. The Orioles also suck, so take that with a grain of salt. But the Phillies are throwing out Zach Wheeler on the mound. He's 10-8 with a 2.77 ERA. 4 or more earned runs allowed in the 3 of his last 4 starts. So while his ERA is incredible, as of late, he hasn't been great, but the Rays have won 7 of their last 8 games with about 7.5 runs per game in that span, while the Phillies have dropped 6 of their last 8. The Phillies have not been great as of late, so give me the Rays. They've got a much better bullpen, one of the best bullpen ERAs in the league.
Yeah, no, you got to go Rays on here. The Phillies are absolutely falling apart. The Phillies and the Mets are just falling apart. How you like a Mets pick last night, by the way?
Yeah, I think I went 0-4 yesterday.
Yeah. No, you got the Yankees.
There we go.
They hung on by the hair on their chin.
1-3, not bad. I'll take it.
But yeah, no, I mean the Phillies are totally falling apart. I'm gonna have to take the Rays too in this one.
Reds, Brewers. This one was kind of a tough one for me, but I'm going to go with the Brewers on the money line. The Reds are throwing out Luis Castillo, who's great. He's 7-12 with a 4.35 ERA. In his last outing, he struck out 7 batters in 7 innings, but he is 0-2 against the Brewers so far this season. The Brewers are throwing out Brandon Woodruff, who has a 4.35 ERA on the season. But since the end of May, he has a 2.77 ERA. So he had a tough start in the beginning of the season, has been better as of late. In 16 starts since May, he's allowed more than 3 earned runs only once. So give me the Brewers with the pitching matchup on this one.
So, I mean, Caroline Fenton literally picks Brandon Woodruff and the Brewers every time he pitches.
Do I really?
Yeah. Ian, how many times has she picked Brandon Woodruff, it feels like?
It feels like I have heard him at least once.
Like, I mean, I think that you really, really love Brandon Woodruff.
I don't even know that I picked him that many times, but I guess I have. Maybe I should get a Brandon Woodruff jersey.
Well, there you go. I'm going to take the Reds. What's
okay?
Next?
White Sox, Blue Jays. Give me Toronto -125. So they're in a 4-game series. This is Game 3. They're 1-1 so far. White Sox are throwing out righty Lucas Giolito, who's 9-9 with a 3.77 ERA, who I am very high on, by the way. But I'm going to rock with the lefty Robbie Ray and the Blue Jays. He is 9-5 with a 2.79 ERA and 24 starts. His last 5 starts, he's got a 1.64 ERA. Last time he faced the White Sox was on June 8th. He only allowed 1 run, 5 hits, and a season-high 13 strikeouts.
I'll take the White Sox. I think they're a pretty good team.
They're a pretty good team.
I think they're a good team.
Yeah.
Those are Carolines.
Carolines are brought to you by BetUS, America's favorite sportsbook for over 25 years. You can sign up for BetUS at BetUS.com. Mention GAME, G-A-M-E, to get 200% in bonuses on your first deposit.
That does it for us. We're out of here. ESPN Radio coming up next. We're back tomorrow at 2.